At my father's funeral, my sister-in-law stood over the open casket and announced that her husband gets the company and $500 million. She looked me dead in the eye and said I was fired effective immediately because a woman has no place running a logistics empire. The 500 guests gasped. My mother nodded in agreement. And my dad, well, if he could have, he would have chuckled right there in his coffin. Because my brother is not who she thinks he is, and she just made the most expensive mistake of her life. Before I tell you how I destroyed her with a single USB drive, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to smile while someone dug their own grave. My name is Zara, and at 35 years old, I am the Chief Financial Officer and Lead Forensic Accountant for Elijah Logistics. For the last 10 years, while my brother Dante was partying in Vegas and my mother was planning galas, I was the one in the boardroom at 3 a.m. saving this family from bankruptcy. I know where every cent is buried. I know which accounts are real and which ones are smoke and mirrors. But to them, I am just the quiet single daughter who needs to find a husband. They mistake my silence for weakness. They are about to learn that silence is just the sound of me reloading. The air in the Greater Atlanta Cathedral was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume. 500 people packed the pews. They were not just friends and family. They were competitors, business partners, city council members, and the hundreds of truck drivers and warehouse managers who made our company the Titan of the South. I stood in the front row, my hand resting on the polished mahogany of my father's casket. I was wearing black the way you are supposed to. I was silent the way a grieving daughter is supposed to be. But my mind was not silent. My mind was running numbers. And then I heard the clicking. It was a sharp, aggressive sound against the marble floor. Click, click, click. I did not have to turn around to know who it was. Tiffany, my brother Dante's wife, the woman who treats the waitstaff like servants and treats me like I am the help. While everyone else was in somber dark colors, Tiffany was walking up the center aisle in a cream-colored dress that was too tight and too short for a funeral. She was wearing huge sunglasses inside a dimly lit church. She walked past me, bumped my shoulder hard enough to make me stumble, and did not even apologize. She walked straight to the pulpit where the Reverend was about to start the eulogy. She snatched the microphone right out of the Reverend's hand. The feedback screech made everyone wince. I saw the board of directors in the third row stiffen. I saw Mrs. Hattie, my dad's executive assistant of 30 years, cover her mouth with her hand. But Tiffany did not care. She adjusted her sunglasses and smiled a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Thank you all for coming to say goodbye to my father-in-law," she said, her voice amplified and echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "It is a sad day, but business must go on. My husband Dante is the only son of Elijah. He is the bloodline, and as his wife I am stepping up to protect his legacy." I looked at Dante. My brother was standing a few feet away from me, sweating through his expensive custom suit. He looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. He knew better. He knew exactly what was happening, but he was too weak to stop her. He had always been weak. That was why Dad never let him near the checkbook. Tiffany continued, her voice gaining a shrill confidence. "I am pleased to announce that effective this minute, I am assuming the role of acting CEO of Elijah Logistics. We are going to make some big changes. We are going to modernize. We are going to bring some class to this trucking business." The silence in the room was heavy. You could hear a pin drop. This was a funeral, not a board meeting. But Tiffany was just getting started. She turned her head and looked directly at me. Her gaze was dismissive, the way you look at a bug you are about to crush. "And my first act as CEO is a necessary one," she said. "Zara, I am afraid we have to let you go." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I kept my face stone cold. I did not blink. I did not cry. I just watched her. "You have done a cute job keeping the books," Tiffany said, putting a nasty emphasis on the word cute. "But this is a man's industry. It requires a strong hand. Dante needs to take his rightful place, and I will be his right hand. You are just a distraction. You are single, you have no children, and honestly, you do not fit the image we are going for." Please hand over your security badge and clear your desk by 5 p.m. today. The audacity was breathtaking. She was firing the CFO, the woman who had single-handedly saved the company from financial ruin 3 times in the last decade, at her own father's funeral. I looked at the employees sitting in the designated section. The truck drivers, big men with calloused hands who had known me since I was a little girl, running around the dispatch yard, looked furious. The IT department looked terrified. They knew I was the only one with the encryption keys to the server. But my mother, Beatrice, she was the one who broke my heart. She was sitting in the front pew, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. When Tiffany made her announcement, Mom did not gasp. She did not protest. She nodded. She actually nodded. She leaned forward and whispered loud enough for me to hear. "It is for the best, Zara. Let your brother handle the heavy lifting. You need to rest. You look tired. Maybe now you can focus on finding a husband." That was the moment the sadness evaporated and the ice set in. My own mother was siding with the woman who mocked us, the woman who spent money faster than we could make it because she was obsessed with the idea of a male heir. She wanted Dante to be the king even if he was a king of ashes. I took a step toward the pulpit. Dante flinched like he thought I was going to hit someone. I walked up the stairs, my heels silent on the carpet runner. I stood next to Tiffany. She smelled like expensive champagne and desperation. "Are you sure you want to do this, Tiffany?" I asked, my voice low and calm. "Right here, right now, in front of the bankers, in front of the investors, in front of God." Tiffany laughed. It was a sharp barking sound. "Look at you trying to cling to power. It is over, Zara. Accept it. Go home. Take a vacation. Use your severance package to buy some better clothes. You are embarrassing yourself." I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the shock. I saw the anger. But I also saw the curiosity. They were waiting to see if I would scream. They were waiting for the angry black woman stereotype that Tiffany was so desperately trying to provoke. I did not give it to her. I leaned into the microphone just close enough that my voice carried over the speakers, smooth and dangerous. "I accept your terms," I said. The crowd gasped again. Tiffany looked confused for a second, then triumphant. "Good," she said. "At least you know your place." I stepped back. I looked at Dante one last time. His eyes were pleading, begging me to fix this, begging me to save him from his own wife. But I was done saving Dante. I had been saving him for 20 years. I paid off his gambling debts. I covered up his DUIs. I cleaned up his messes so Dad would not die of a heart attack. Well, Dad was dead now, and my obligation to Dante died with him. I walked down the steps. I did not go back to my seat. I walked straight down the center aisle. I could feel 500 pairs of eyes burning into my back. I walked past the heavy oak doors and out into the blinding Atlanta sun. The humidity hit me instantly. I stood on the concrete steps of the church and took a deep breath. My phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a text from Hattie, the HR director inside. Text message reads, "She is crazy. The staff is ready to walk. Just say the word." I typed back, "Do nothing. Let her hang herself." I walked toward the parking lot. I needed to get to my car. I needed to get to my real office, the one Tiffany did not know about. But before I could reach my G-Wagon, I heard the click, click, click of heels running behind me. "Hey! Wait up!" It was Tiffany. She had actually followed me out of the funeral. Dante was trailing behind her like a lost puppy, and my mother was shuffling along with them. Tiffany stood between me and my car door. She had a piece of paper in her hand. It looked crumpled, like she had been carrying it around in her sweaty palm for hours. "I need your keys," she said. "Excuse me," I asked. "The company car," she said, pointing to my SUV. "And the keys to the company penthouse downtown. Those are corporate assets. They belong to the CEO. That is me. Or Dante. Whatever. They belong to us." I looked at the piece of paper she was waving. "What is that?" I asked. "This," she said, smoothing it out against her chest, "is the real will. Dante found it in your dad's bedside table at the hospital. He wrote it right before he died. It leaves 100% of everything to Dante. Everything. The company, the house, the accounts. You get nothing. I looked at the paper. I could see the handwriting from here. It was smooth, loopy, confident cursive. My father had Parkinson's disease for the last 5 years of his life. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold a spoon, let alone write a legible sentence. He signed documents with a digital stamp because he could not hold a pen. "That is a forgery, Tiffany," I said. "And a bad one. Dad could not write. You know that." "Beatrice." My mother stepped in. She put a hand on my arm. "Zara, stop it. Do not be jealous. Your father wanted Dante to have it. He told me. He said he wanted the legacy to carry the family name. You will get married one day and change your name. The company needs to stay Elijah." The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Mom knew Dad could not write. She fed him soup when his hands shook too much. But she was willing to lie, willing to rewrite history just to prop up her golden boy. "Give her the keys," Zara. Dante said, his voice weak. "Just give them to her. I do not want a scene." "You do not want a scene?" I asked, laughing dryly. "Your wife just turned our father's funeral into a circus, and you are worried about a scene in the parking lot." Tiffany snapped her fingers in my face. "Keys, now, or I call the police and report the car stolen." I looked at the three of them. The greedy sister-in-law, the coward brother, the enabling mother. They deserved each other. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the key fob to the G-Wagon. It was heavy in my hand. "You want the car?" I asked. "It is my car," Tiffany spat. I threw the keys. I did not toss them gently. I chucked them as hard as I could into the dense thicket of azalea bushes bordering the parking lot. "Go fetch," I said. Tiffany shrieked. "You bitch! Those keys cost thousands of dollars." I turned to my mother. "You want him to have the legacy, Mom? Fine, he can have it, he can have all of it. But when the house of cards falls down, do not call me." I pulled out my phone and opened the Uber app. My driver was 2 minutes away. "You are making a mistake," Dante said, and for a second he sounded terrified. "You know I cannot run this place. You know I do not know the codes." I looked at him. I looked at the brother I had protected since we were kids. "You should have thought about that before you let your wife fire the only person who knows where the bodies are buried," I said. My Uber pulled up, a beat-up Toyota Camry, a far cry from the luxury cars I was used to. But it was my ride to freedom. I opened the door and got in. As the car pulled away, I watched them through the rear window. Tiffany was on her hands and knees in her expensive dress, crawling through the mud and the bushes looking for the keys. Dante was standing there with his head in his hands. Mom was patting his back. I took out my phone again. I scrolled down to a contact saved simply as the Wolf. It was my father's personal attorney, Mr. Sterling, a man who was not on the company payroll, but on my personal payroll. I typed a message. "Activate the Omega Protocol. Lock them out." I watched the 3 dots dance on the screen. A reply came back instantly. "Done. It has begun." I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. They thought they had won. They thought they had cut off the head of the snake. But they forgot that I was the one who built the snake. I was the one who fed it. And now I was going to be the one to tell it to bite. This was not just about a job. This was about respect. And I was about to teach them a lesson that $500 million could not fix. They wanted the company. They could have it. But they had no idea that without me, Elijah Logistics was nothing but a parking lot full of trucks, with no gas and no drivers. The war had started, and I had the nuclear codes. I stepped out of the heavy church doors and into the humid Atlanta heat, my heels clicking sharply against the pavement. The parking lot was filled with luxury cars, a testament to the empire my father had built. My G-Wagon was parked in the VIP spot, gleaming in the sun. I just wanted to get in it, drive to my apartment, and maybe scream into a pillow for an hour. But as I reached for the door handle, a hand slammed against the window. Going somewhere, Zara. It was Tiffany. Of course it was. She was out of breath, her chest heaving beneath that ridiculous cream dress. She had run across the parking lot in stilettos just to catch me. Dante was trailing behind her, looking like he wished the asphalt would open up and swallow him whole. And behind him, my mother Beatrice was shuffling along, clutching her purse like it contained the crown jewels. I turned around slowly. I took off my sunglasses so she could see my eyes. So she could see there was no fear there, just exhaustion, and a growing cold rage. "What do you want, Tiffany?" I asked. "I am done talking to you. I want my keys," she said, holding out a hand with perfectly manicured nails. "Your keys," I repeated. "The keys to the G-Wagon," she said, pointing at my car. "And the keys to the company penthouse downtown. Those are corporate assets. They belong to the CEO. That is me, or Dante. Whatever. They belong to us. And since you are no longer an employee, you have no right to them." I looked at Dante. He was staring at his shoes. "Dante, tell your wife to back off before I do something we will both regret." Dante looked up, his eyes pleading. "Zara, just give them to her. Please, I do not want a scene." "You do not want a scene?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "Your wife just turned our father's funeral into a circus, and you are worried about a scene in the parking lot. You are pathetic." Tiffany snapped her fingers in my face. "Focus, Zara. Keys. Now. Or I call the police and report the car stolen." I leaned against the car door and crossed my arms. "You are really enjoying this, aren't you?" Tiffany smiled. It was a cruel, satisfied smile. "You have no idea. I have been waiting for this day for 5 years. Ever since you looked down your nose at me at our wedding. You thought you were so much better than me because you have a degree and a corner office. Well, look who is in charge now." She reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. It looked like a napkin or a piece of scrap paper. It was stained with something brown coffee, maybe. "Read it and weep," she said, thrusting it at me. I took the paper. It was written in blue ballpoint pen. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible. It read, "I, Elijah, leave 100% of my company and assets to my only son, Dante. My daughter Zara gets nothing. She has enough." I stared at it. I looked at the signature at the bottom. It was a scribble, a meaningless loop. "This is a joke, right?" I asked, looking up at her. "It is a legal document," Tiffany said, snatching it back. "Dante found it in your dad's bedside table at the hospital. He wrote it right before he died. With his last breath, he wanted to make sure his legacy went to the right person." I laughed. I could not help it. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Tiffany, my father had Parkinson's disease. His hands shook so badly he could not hold a fork. He has signed every document with a digital stamp or a fingerprint for the last 5 years. He could not write a grocery list, let alone a will. And even if he could, he would never write something like this. He knew Dante would gamble it away in a week." My mother stepped forward then. She put a hand on my arm, her touch light but suffocating. "Zara, stop it," she said, her voice trembling. "Don't be jealous. Your father wanted Dante to have it. He told me. He said he wanted the legacy to carry the family name. You will get married one day and change your name. The company needs to stay Elijah." I pulled my arm away from her like she had burned me. "Mom, you fed him soup. You wiped his mouth. You know he could not write. You know this is a lie. Why are you doing this?" Beatrice looked away. "Because Dante needs this, Zara. He is a man. He needs to feel important. You are strong. You can take care of yourself. You always have. Just let him have this." "Please, let him have this," I repeated. "You want me to let him destroy the company Dad built with his bare hands, just so Dante can feel important. You want me to hand over everything I worked for because I am a woman." "Yes," Tiffany interjected. "Exactly. Now give me the keys." I looked at the 3 of them. The greedy sister-in-law, who saw my father as an ATM. The coward brother who would sell his soul for a poker chip. The enabling mother who would burn the world down to keep her baby boy warm. They deserved each other. I reached into my purse. My fingers closed around the heavy key fob. "You want the car?" I asked softly. "It is my car," Tiffany spat. "Give it to me." I pulled the keys out. I held them up so the sun glinted off the Mercedes logo. "Fine," I said. "You want to be the boss. You want the assets. You can have them." I pulled my arm back and threw the keys as hard as I could. They sailed through the air, a silver arc against the blue sky. They landed with a soft thud deep in the middle of a dense thorny patch of azalea bushes bordering the parking lot. "Go fetch," I said. Tiffany shrieked. It was a sound like a banshee. "You bitch! Those keys cost $1,000 to replace." She hiked up her cream dress and ran toward the bushes. She got down on her hands and knees, crawling into the mud, cursing as the thorns snagged her expensive clothes. Dante just stood there staring at the bushes. I turned to my mother. "You made your choice, Mom," I said. "I hope he is worth it. Because when the creditors come calling, and they will come, do not call me. I am done." I pulled out my phone. My Uber was 2 minutes away. A Toyota Camry. It was humble. It was perfect. "You are making a huge mistake," Dante said, finally finding his voice. "You know I cannot run this place. You know I do not know the codes. You know I do not even know how to approve payroll." I looked at him. I felt a pang of sadness, but I crushed it. "You should have thought about that before you forged a will and let your wife fire the only person who knows how to keep the lights on," I said. My Uber pulled up. I opened the door and got in. I did not look back. As the car pulled onto the highway, I took out my phone again. I scrolled to a contact I had saved for this exact moment. Assistant. Not my company assistant. My personal assistant. The one I paid out of my own pocket. The one who managed my real life. I typed a message. "Activate the Omega protocol. Freeze everything. Lock them out of the level 1 servers." I hit send. I watched the message deliver. I watched the read receipt appear. It was done. They had the keys to the car, they had the office, they had the title, but they did not have the engine. And without the engine, a car is just a very expensive piece of metal that goes nowhere. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window. I was unemployed. I was disinherited. I was alone. But I was smiling. Because the war had just begun, and they had brought a knife to a nuclear fight. 3 days later, I was sitting in my favorite armchair sipping a kale smoothie and watching the security feed from my laptop. I had been fired, humiliated, and disowned, but I had never been more relaxed. Because the show was just getting started. The feed from the main lobby of Elijah Logistics showed a scene straight out of a circus. Dante and Tiffany arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. But they didn't just walk in, they made an entrance. A black limousine, which I knew for a fact was rented because I had personally canceled the corporate account for private cars, pulled up to the curb. Dante stepped out first, wearing a white suit that made him look like a low-budget televangelist. He held the door open for Tiffany. And there she was, the new CEO. She was wearing a hot pink power suit with shoulder pads so sharp they could take an eye out. She had a tiara on her head. A literal tiara. It was small, probably plastic, but it was there glittering under the Atlanta sun. She walked into the lobby like she owned the air conditioning. I switched the camera view to the executive floor. The office, my father's office, the place where he had built an empire from a single truck, had been desecrated. In 72 hours, Tiffany had hired a crew to work around the clock. The walls, once a dignified navy blue, were now a blinding shade of bubblegum pink. The mahogany desk, a sturdy piece of furniture that had seen 30 years of contracts and coffee stains, was gone. In its place was a glass table with gold legs. But the worst part, the part that made my blood boil even from 3 miles away, was the trash can. In the corner of the room, overflowing from a garbage bin, were my father's model trucks. He had collected them for decades. Each one represented a milestone. The first truck he bought. The truck that drove the first interstate route. The truck that survived the blizzard of '98. They were hand-painted. They were priceless, and Tiffany had thrown them away like they were burger wrappers. I took a deep breath. Patience, Zara. Let her dig. I watched as Tiffany called her first all-hands meeting. She stood at the head of the conference room table. Dante sat to her right, looking like he was trying to remember his lines. The room was packed with the senior staff. The COO, Mr. Henderson, the head of HR, Hattie, the VP of Sales, the Director of Operations. These were serious people, people with MBAs and decades of experience, and they were looking at Tiffany like she was an alien species. "Good morning, subjects," Tiffany said. I choked on my smoothie. She actually said subjects. "As you know, I am the new sheriff in town, but you can call me Queen T." Mr. Henderson, the COO, raised a hand. He was a man of few words, a former Marine who ran operations with military precision. "Mrs. Dante," he began. Queen T. Tiffany corrected. "Right. Queen T. We have a situation. The fuel contracts are up for renewal today. We need a signature on the wire transfer for $2 million to secure the diesel for next month. If we don't pay by noon, the fleet stops." Tiffany waved a hand dismissively. "Boring. We can deal with gas later. I have more important news." She clapped her hands. An assistant, a poor girl I didn't recognize, scurried in carrying a large poster board. Tiffany unveiled it. It was a picture of a yacht. A massive, sleek white yacht. "This," Tiffany announced, "is the future of Elijah Logistics. The SS Dante. We are buying it today. It will be our floating headquarters for client entertainment." The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the projector. Mr. Henderson stood up. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we are a trucking company. We move freight on highways. We don't need a yacht, and we certainly don't have the liquidity to buy one right now, not with the fuel contracts pending." Tiffany narrowed her eyes. "Liquidity? We have plenty of money. I saw the accounts. There is $50 million in the employee pension fund. Use that." The gasp that went around the room was audible even through the crappy microphone on the security camera. "You cannot touch the pension fund," Mr. Henderson said, his voice rising. "That is illegal. That is jail time illegal. That money belongs to the drivers, to the warehouse workers, to the people in this room. I am the CEO." Tiffany screamed, slamming her hand on the glass table. "I decide what is illegal. I decide where the money goes. And if you don't like it, you can get out. You are fired. Get your things and go." Mr. Henderson looked at Dante. "Dante, are you hearing this? She wants to raid the pension fund." Dante looked at his shoes. He looked at the ceiling. He looked anywhere but at the man who had helped him tie his tie for his first communion. "Do as she says, Henderson," Dante mumbled. "She is the boss." Mr. Henderson shook his head. He took off his ID badge. He placed it gently on the table. "God help you all," he said. And he walked out. I watched him go. I felt a pang of guilt. Henderson was a good man, but he was collateral damage. I would hire him back. I would give him a raise. But first, the cancer had to be cut out. The meeting descended into chaos. Tiffany was shouting orders that made no sense. She wanted to fire the drivers who were too old and replace them with hotter ones. She wanted to change the company logo to a silhouette of her face. I switched camera views to the IT department. It was a different world down there. The IT guys, usually the quietest people in the building, were huddled around a monitor. I recognized the screen. It was TikTok. One of the junior devs, a Gen Z kid named Kevin who always wore hoodies, was holding his phone up. He was live streaming. He had hacked into the conference room feed and was broadcasting Tiffany's meltdown to the world. I pulled up TikTok on my phone. I found the stream. It already had 10,000 viewers. The comments were flying by so fast I couldn't read them. "Is this real, LMAO? Queen T, more like Queen Trash. She just fired the COO for not embezzling funds. Is she going to jail? Wait, did she say she wants to fire the old drivers my dad drives for them? This is discrimination." Kevin looked into the camera and whispered, Guys, you are not gonna believe this. She is literally calling us slaves. Listen. He turned the volume up on the feed. I don't care about their unions, Tiffany was shrieking. They are just drivers. They are basically slaves. We pay too much. Cut their benefits. Use the money for the boat deposit. The viewer count jumped to 50,000. The hashtag by Tiffany started trending. I smiled. The court of public opinion was now in session. Back in the pink office, the meeting had ended. The staff had fled. Tiffany and Dante were alone. Finally, Tiffany said, "Some peace and quiet. Now let's get some money." She sat down at my father's desk. She pulled out the keyboard. She logged into the main terminal. Or she tried to. "Okay, Dante, what is the password?" she asked. "I don't know," Dante said. "Dad never gave it to me." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Ugh. Useless." "Fine. I will use the admin override." She typed something. "Access denied." She typed something else. "Access denied." She started banging on the keys. "Let me in. I am the owner." And then the screen changed. It went black. A single red box appeared in the center. I had programmed this specific message 3 years ago just for a laugh. I never thought I would actually get to see someone read it. The text was simple. System lockdown initiated. Biometric scan required. Please present retina of Zara Elijah. Tiffany stared at the screen. She read it once. She read it twice. "Zara," she screamed. "Why does it need Zara?" "Because she set up the system," Dante said, his voice trembling. "She is the only level 1 admin. Dad made it that way after the incident." "What incident?" Tiffany snapped. "The gambling thing," Dante whispered. "When I lost the money. Zara locked everything down. She said nobody touches the main accounts without her eyes. Literally." Tiffany stood up. She picked up the keyboard. She lifted it over her head and smashed it down onto the glass table. Keys flew everywhere. "Get her on the phone!" Tiffany shrieked. "Get that witch on the phone right now!" She grabbed the monitor. A beautiful, curved 4K display. She ripped the cords out of the back. She threw it across the room. It crashed into the pink wall, leaving a dent in the fresh plaster before shattering on the floor. I watched the feed go static as the camera shook from the impact. I closed my laptop. I finished my smoothie. It was time to get dressed. I had a feeling my phone was about to ring, and I wanted to look good when I ignored it. I was lying face down on a heated massage table at the Ritz-Carlton spa, smelling lavender, and listening to whale sounds when my phone started vibrating against the marble counter. It was not a polite buzz. It was a frantic, continuous seizure that threatened to rattle my green tea right off the saucer. I ignored it for the first minute. I was currently paying $300 an hour for a woman named Elena to knead the stress of my father's funeral out of my shoulders. I deserved this. I was unemployed after all. And as my sister-in-law Tiffany had so kindly pointed out, I needed to rest and find a husband. But the phone would not stop. It was relentless. Elena paused, her hands hovering over my back. "Ma'am, do you need to get that?" "It sounds like an emergency." I sighed into the face cradle. "It is not an emergency, Elena. It is just the sound of incompetence coming home to roost. But you are right. It is ruining the vibe." I reached out a hand, grabbed the phone, and flipped it over. The screen was lit up with notifications, not from Dante, not from Tiffany, but from the Google News alert I had set up for Elijah Logistics. Headline: Port of Los Angeles crisis. 50 million in perishable cargo stranded. FDA threatens fines. I smiled. It was happening faster than I thought. I sat up, wrapping the plush white robe around myself. I tapped the screen to open the live feed from the logistics dashboard. I still had read-only access on my personal tablet. I had not locked them out of seeing the disaster, only out of fixing it. The map of the Port of Los Angeles looked like a crime scene. 50 red dots were flashing angrily. Those were our containers. And they were not just any containers. They were the platinum priority shipment. Container contents. Live Maine lobsters destined for high-end restaurants in Vegas. Container contents. Temperature-sensitive experimental vaccines for a clinical trial in San Diego. These were the crown jewels of our shipping contracts. They required what we in the industry call the cold chain protocol. The temperature had to be monitored every 15 minutes. The customs clearance had to be signed digitally by an authorized officer of the company within 1 hour of docking. If the signature was missing, Customs and Border Protection would lock the containers down. The power would be cut to the refrigeration units to save port energy. The lobsters would die in 4 hours. The vaccines would spoil in 6. The fines for this specific violation were $50,000 per hour, per container. I did the math in my head. They had been docked for 3 hours. That was already $7.5 million in fines. And if those vaccines spoiled, the lawsuit from the pharmaceutical company would bankrupt Elijah Logistics by Friday. My phone rang again. It was Dante. I looked at Elena. "Do you mind if I put this on speaker? I think you might find this entertaining." She shrugged, dipping her hands in warm oil. "Go ahead." I tapped the green button and set the phone on the counter next to the orchid. "Hello, Dante," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "I am in the middle of a hot stone treatment." "Make it quick," Zara Dante screamed. His voice was high-pitched, cracking with panic. "You have to help us. The Port Authority is on the line. They are threatening to arrest the drivers." "That sounds serious," I said, examining my manicure. "Why are you calling me? I am just a fired employee. I don't have a security badge. Remember?" "Stop playing games," Dante yelled. "There is a guy from the FDA here. He is shouting about thermal degradation. He keeps asking for the bill of lading and the authorized signatory code." Tiffany tried to give him a check, but he threw it back at her. "He said we need the digital key." "Ah," I said, "the digital key." "Yes. Where is it? Is it in the safe? Is it on your laptop? Just give me the password." I chuckled. It was a low, throaty sound. "Dante, you really never paid attention during the board meetings, did you? The digital key isn't a password you write on a sticky note. It is a cryptographic token generated by the Department of Homeland Security. It is linked to a specific person's biometric identity." "And let me guess," Dante asked, his voice trembling. "Who is it linked to?" "Me," I said. "Just me. Dad transferred the authority to me 5 years ago when his hands started shaking too much to use the stylus. I am the only person on this earth whose digital signature is recognized by the U.S. Customs database for Elijah Logistics." "Then come sign it," Dante begged. "Just log in remotely. You can do it from your phone, right? Just press the button. The lobsters are dying, Zara. We can smell them from here." I looked at Elena. She was covering her mouth to hide a smile. "I cannot do that, Dante," I said. "Why not? Are you that spiteful? Are you going to let the company burn just to prove a point?" "No, Dante. I am not being spiteful. I am being legal. You see, Tiffany fired me. She terminated my employment effective immediately. If I log into that system now as a non-employee, that is a federal crime. It is called corporate espionage and unauthorized access to a protected computer system. I could go to prison for 10 years. And I look way too good in Chanel to wear orange." There was a scuffling sound on the other end of the line, a screech of movement, then a voice that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. "Listen to me, you little witch." It was Tiffany. Queen T herself. "I am the CEO," she screamed. "I am ordering you to sign those papers. If those vaccines spoil, I am going to sue you for every penny you have. I will take your condo. I will take your shoes. I will take that ugly cat of yours." "I do not have a cat, Tiffany," I said calmly. "And you cannot sue me for not doing a job you fired me from. That is not how labor laws work. In fact, if you want my consultation, my rate for freelance crisis management is $10,000 an hour, with a 4-hour minimum, paid in advance, Bitcoin only. You are insane, Tiffany shrieked. You broke the system. You sabotaged us. You changed the codes before you left. I did not change a thing, I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming ice cold. The system is working exactly as it was designed. It was designed to keep incompetent, unauthorized people from moving dangerous and expensive cargo across state lines. It locked you out because you are a security threat, Tiffany. You are a virus in the operating system, and the firewall just did its job. You have to come back, she yelled. You have to come back right now and work. You will work for free until this mess is cleaned up. I am your boss. I am your family. You owe us, I owe you, I asked. I owe you. I spent 10 years fixing Dante's mistakes. I spent 10 years covering for my mother's spending habits. I built the war chest that you are currently trying to loot. I owe you nothing. I signaled Elena to resume the massage. Listen closely, Tiffany, I said. Because I am only going to say this once. The only way those containers move is if the authorized officer signs for them. Currently, the company does not have an authorized officer. You fired her. If you want to fix this, you need to apply for a new digital key with the Department of Homeland Security. How long does that take? Dante asked in the background. His voice was so quiet I almost missed it. I smiled. 6 to 8 weeks, brother. Assuming you pass the background check. And considering your credit score and that little incident in Vegas last year. Good luck. There was silence on the line. Absolute terrified silence. They did the math. 6 weeks. The lobsters would be dust. The vaccines would be poison. The fines would be in the tens of millions. This is murder, Tiffany screamed. You are murdering this company. It is not murder, I said. It is assisted suicide. You pulled the plug. Tiffany, I am just watching the flatline. I hung up the phone. I did not just hang up. I blocked the number. I blocked Dante's number. I blocked the office landline. I looked at Elena. She looked a little shell-shocked. Wow, she whispered. That was intense. I laid my head back down on the towel. Sorry about that, I said. Can we focus on the lower back? I carry a lot of tension there. Elena went back to work. But I could not relax just yet. I reached for my tablet one last time. I pulled up the stock market ticker for our publicly traded competitors. And then I looked at the internal valuation index for Elijah Logistics. It was a bloodbath. Word had leaked. The trucking forums were lighting up. The drivers were posting videos of the locked gates at the LA depot. The hashtag #LobsterGate was starting to trend below #Buy Tiffany. Investors were panicking. Our credit rating, which I had painstakingly built up to a AAA over a decade, was being put on watch for a downgrade. And then I saw it. The stock value of our holdings dropped. Not a little drop, a cliff dive, 20% in 1 hour. $500 million. Tiffany had bragged about inheriting $500 million. In the last 60 minutes, she had lost 100 million of it. And it was not even lunchtime. I closed my eyes and finally truly relaxed. The lavender smelled sweeter. The whale sounds seemed more melodic. They wanted to play business. They wanted to wear the suits and sit in the big chairs. But they forgot that business is not about the title on the door. It is about the ability to execute. Tiffany thought she could just step into my shoes because she married my brother. She thought my job was easy. She thought I just sat around and signed checks. She did not know about the regulations. She did not know about the compliance protocols. She did not know that the logistics industry runs on trust and digital verification, and without me, she had neither. I wondered what she was doing right now. Was she trying to bribe the customs officer? That would be a felony. Was she trying to break into the server room? That would trigger the halon gas system. Whatever she was doing it alone. I rolled my shoulders. Elena dug her thumbs into a knot near my spine. Right there, she asked, Right there, I sighed. My phone buzzed one more time. It was a text from Hattie. Text reads, "The FDA agent just put handcuffs on Tiffany. She tried to slap him. They are reading her rights. Dante is crying in the corner." I laughed into the towel. Best $300 I ever spent. The vibration of my phone on the passenger seat of the Uber was different this time. It was not a call. It was not a text. It was a singular, heavy ping. The sound of a guillotine blade dropping. I picked it up. It was a notification from the First National Bank of Atlanta. Alert: credit facility suspended. Reason: material adverse change. Governance risk. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. The bankers had finally woken up. When a company changes its CEO, CFO, and COO in a single morning, and the new CEO has a credit score lower than her shoe size, banks get nervous. They invoke the Material Adverse Change Clause. It means they freeze the lines of credit immediately. Elijah Logistics ran on credit. We paid for fuel on credit. We paid for insurance on credit. We paid the drivers on credit and paid it back when the clients paid us 30 days later. It is a cash flow dance. And the music just stopped. I opened the security app on my phone again. I had to see this. The feed from the lobby showed that the party was definitely over. But it was not the bankers who were causing the scene. It was two men standing at the reception desk. They were not wearing suits. They were wearing leather jackets that looked too tight across the shoulders. One of them had a neck tattoo that crept up behind his ear. They were not there for a meeting. They were there for a collection. I saw Dante come out of the elevator. He saw the men. He stopped dead in his tracks. His face went the color of old milk. He tried to back into the elevator, but the doors had already closed. The man with the tattoo saw him. He smiled. It was a smile that promised violence. He walked right past the security guard, who was too busy posting on Instagram to notice, and cornered my brother against the marble wall. Tiffany came running out of the elevator a second later, screaming, "Excuse me, you cannot be here. Do you have an appointment?" "I am the CEO." The second man, a giant who looked like he ate concrete for breakfast, laughed at her. He handed her a piece of paper. It was not a legal summons. It was a marker, a gambling marker. I zoomed in as best I could. I knew that piece of paper. I knew the amount written on it. $5 million. You see, Dante had a problem. He liked to bet on things. Horses, dogs, cards, raindrops sliding down a window. It did not matter. 5 years ago, I paid off his debts to keep him alive. I made him sign the conservatorship papers in exchange for his life. But I stopped paying the interest payments the moment Tiffany fired me. I watched on the screen as Tiffany read the paper. Her mouth fell open. She looked at Dante. She looked at the men. She looked at the paper again. "You owe $5 million. I could see her lips form the words. Dante was shaking his head, pleading with her. Tiffany started hitting him. Right there in the lobby, she was hitting the new chairman of the board with her purse. "You broke idiot," she screamed. "I thought you were rich. I thought you had the inheritance." One of the men grabbed Dante by the lapels of his white suit. He said something that made Dante weep openly. Then the men let him go. They pointed at their watches. They pointed at the door. They walked out. The message was clear. Pay up, or we break legs. I closed the app. I did not need to see anymore. The sharks were circling, and there was no blood in the water yet, but there would be soon. I arrived at my rental apartment 20 minutes later. It was a modest place in Buckhead, far away from the family estate. I kept it for nights when I worked late, or when I just needed to escape the suffocation of my family. Nobody knew about it except my assistant, and unfortunately my mother. I had just poured myself a glass of wine when the pounding started. It was not a knock. It was an assault on the wood. "Zara, Zara, open this door." It was Beatrice. My mother. I took a slow sip of the Pinot Noir. I walked to the door. I checked the peephole. She was alone. She looked disheveled. Her hair was frizzy, which never happened. She was not wearing makeup. She looked old and terrified. I opened the door, but I left the security chain on. "Hello, Mother," I said. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Open the door!" she shrieked, grabbing the frame. "You have to help us. They are going to kill him." "Who is going to kill who?" I asked, feigning ignorance. The men. The men at the office. They told Dante he has 24 hours to come up with $5 million, or they are going to shatter his knees. They know where he lives. Zara, they know where I live. I looked at her. I looked for any sign that she was worried about me, that she was worried about how I was doing after being humiliated at my father's funeral. There was nothing. Just panic for Dante. Always Dante. "That sounds like a police matter, Mom. You should call 911. "We cannot call the police," she cried. "These are bad men, Zara. If we call the police, they will hurt him even worse. We need the money. We need it now." I took another sip of wine. "I don't have $5 million, Mom. I am unemployed. Remember, I was fired by the CEO. "Don't play games with me," Beatrice hissed. "We know you have the codes. Tiffany called me. She said the bank froze the accounts because of some security protocol you set up. She said there is plenty of money in the corporate reserve, but she cannot access it without your retina scan." Ah, so that was it. Tiffany had sent her. Tiffany was too proud to come herself, so she sent the one person she knew could manipulate me. "She wants me to unlock the server," I said. "Yes," Beatrice nodded frantically. "Just unlock the server. Transfer the money to pay these men, and then we can figure this out. Please, Zara. He is your brother. He is the only son. Your father would not want him to be hurt. My father would not want him to gamble away the company," I said coldly. Beatrice reached through the gap in the door and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Zara, listen to me. You have to be the bigger person. You have always been the strong one. Dante is weak. We know he is weak. That is why we need you. Just fix this one last time. Please, for me." I looked at her hand on my wrist. I looked at the desperation in her eyes. And for the first time in 35 years, I saw the truth clearly. She did not love me. She loved what I could do for her. She loved that I was the cleanup crew. She loved that I was the shield she used to protect her golden boy. I was not her daughter. I was her utility. I pulled my wrist away. "No," I said. "What?" she gasped. "No," I repeated. "I will not unlock the server. I will not transfer the money. I will not save him. You selfish little brat!" She screamed, her face twisting into something ugly. "You want him to get hurt? You are jealous. You have always been jealous of him because he was special and you were You, just me," I whispered. "Just the one who paid the mortgage. Just the one who hired the doctors when Dad got sick. Just the one who made sure you had that black card you loved to swipe." Beatrice slammed her hand against the door. "If you do not help him, you are dead to me. Do you hear me? I will never forgive you. I am already dead to you, Mom," I said. "You buried me the day you let that woman stand over Dad's casket and spit on my name. You stood there and nodded. You chose your side." I started to close the door. "Wait!" Beatrice cried, jamming her foot in the gap. "Wait! What are we supposed to do? Tiffany cannot access the money. Dante has no money. How do we pay them?" I looked at my mother one last time. "Tell Queen T to sell her Hermes collection," I said. "I hear the resale market for Birkin bags is very hot right now. That should cover the interest for a week." "Zara and Mom," I added, "get your foot out of my door, or I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing." She looked at me with pure hatred, but she pulled her foot back. I slammed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I slid the chain into place. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. I listened to her screaming in the hallway. I listened to her cursing my name. I listened to her footsteps retreating down the hall, stumbling and frantic. My heart was pounding in my chest. My hands were shaking. It is a terrible thing to orphan yourself. It is a terrible thing to realize that the only way to survive is to cut the cord that connects you to the people who made you. But as the silence returned to the apartment, my hands steadied. I walked back to the living room. I sat down on the sofa. I opened my laptop. I was not done. I pulled up the file named Shadow Corp. Tiffany and Dante were looking for money in Elijah Logistics. They were looking in the wrong place. They were fighting over the crumbs on the table, unaware that I owned the bakery. The screen illuminated my face. It showed a pie chart, a beautiful green pie chart. Asset ownership distribution. Land and warehouses owned by Shadow Corp. Fleet vehicles, 500 trucks, owned by Shadow Corp. Intellectual property and routing software owned by Shadow Corp. Operating leases for Elijah Logistics expired. My father knew. He knew Dante would eventually crash the car. So he gave Dante the car, but he gave me the road. He gave me the gas. He gave me the keys to the garage. Tiffany thought she was the CEO, but she was just a squatter in my building. She was driving a rental car that was overdue. I typed in a command: initiate asset recall. It was time to evict the tenants. I watched the command execute. A progress bar appeared on the screen. Asset seizure notices. Generating 10%, 20%. Let the loan sharks break Dante's legs. Let Tiffany scream at the walls. Let my mother cry about her precious son. I took another sip of wine. It tasted like victory. The phone on my desk rang. It was not a cell phone. It was a burner I kept for one specific contact. I picked it up. "Hello, Mr. Sterling," I said. "Zara." The old lawyer's voice was gravelly and warm. "I see you activated the protocol." "I did," I said. "Good," he said. "I have the video queued up. The one your father made. Are you ready for the reading of the will?" I looked at the progress bar on my screen. 100%. Complete. "I am ready," I said. "Set it up for tomorrow morning," Sterling said. "I will send the invites. Make sure you wear something bright. Your father hated it when you wore black." I hung up. I walked to my closet. I pushed aside the black funeral dress. I pushed aside the gray business suits. I pulled out a dress I had bought in Paris 5 years ago and never wore. It was red. Blood red. The color of war. The color of power. Tomorrow I was going to a funeral, but this time it would be theirs. I drove my rental car to the outskirts of Atlanta to a place that did not exist on Google Maps. It was an unmarked brick building nestled between two abandoned textile factories. To the naked eye, it looked like a teardown, but I knew better. This was the private archives of Sterling and Associates, the oldest and most discreet law firm in the South. Mr. Sterling was waiting for me. He was standing by the heavy steel door, an umbrella in his hand, shielding him from the drizzle. He looked like a man from another era in his three-piece suit and pocket watch. He was 80 years old, and he had been my father's consigliere for 40 of them. He was the only man Elijah trusted completely, and he was the only man who knew the whole truth. "Good evening, Zara," he said, his voice gravelly and warm. "I trust you were not followed." I checked my rearview mirror. No. I think Tiffany is too busy trying to figure out why the lights just went out at the headquarters to follow me. Sterling allowed a small, dry smile to touch his lips. He ushered me inside. The interior smelled of old paper and expensive mahogany. We walked down a long hallway lined with filing cabinets until we reached the main vault. He keyed in a code and the heavy door hissed open. Inside, there was a single table with 2 chairs. On the table sat a thick black binder and a small silver USB drive. "Please sit," Sterling said. "I have the tea you like. Earl Grey, 2 sugars." I sat down. My hands were shaking slightly. I clasped them together on the table to steady them. "Is it done?" I asked. Sterling nodded. "The asset recall notices have been sent. The banks have been notified of the lease termination. As of 1 hour ago, Elijah Logistics is technically a squatter in its own building." He opened the black binder. It was the Bible of my life. You see, Tiffany thought she understood the company. She thought she understood the money. She saw the trucks rolling down the highway and the warehouses full of goods, and she saw dollar signs. But she never looked at the paperwork. She never looked at the deeds. 5 years ago, after Dante crashed his Ferrari into a police station while high on painkillers, my father came to me in the middle of the night. He was crying. It was the only time I ever saw him cry. He told me he loved his son, but he could not let him destroy the family legacy. He told me Dante was sick, that he had a hole in his soul that money would only make bigger. So we created Shadow Corp. It was a holding company, a ghost entity. And on paper it was boring. It had no employees, it had no website, it had no logo, but it owned everything. I ran my hand over the documents in the binder. Deed to the headquarters at 500 Peachtree Street. Owner Shadow Corp. Title to the fleet of 500 Kenworth trucks. Owner Shadow Corp. Copyright to the proprietary routing algorithm. Owner Shadow Corp. Title to the executive penthouse. Owner Shadow Corp. Elijah Logistics. The company Tiffany was currently sitting on the throne of owned nothing. It owned staplers, it owned coffee mugs, it owned the debt, but it leased every single asset from Shadow Corp, and the operating agreement for Shadow Corp had one shareholder, one director, one signatory. Zara Elijah. My father gave me the company 5 years ago, Sterling said softly. He transferred the assets one by one. He paid the gift taxes. He made sure it was ironclad. He knew that if Dante ever got his hands on the title deeds, he would sell them to the first bidder to pay off a gambling debt. So he took the temptation away. I looked at the signature on the bottom of the deed transfer. My father's handwriting was shaky even back then, but it was firm enough. He had trusted me. He had bypassed his son, his wife, and the expectations of society to give the keys to the kingdom to his daughter. "Does Dante know?" I asked. Sterling shook his head. No. Elijah wanted to protect him from the truth. He let Dante play the role of the vice president. He let him wear the suits and go to the dinners, but it was a play, a performance. Dante was an employee just like everyone else. He has no equity, he has no shares, he has nothing. And my mother, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sterling looked sad. Beatrice refused to know. Elijah tried to tell her once. She screamed at him. She told him he was emasculating his son, so he stopped trying. She chose to live in the fantasy Zara. Just as she chose to stand by Tiffany at the funeral. I took a sip of the tea. It was hot and comforting. "So Tiffany is the CEO of a shell," I said. "Correct," Sterling replied. "She is the captain of a ship that has no engine, no sails, and as of this morning, no water. She is liable for the debts of Elijah Logistics, but she has no assets to pay them. When the creditors come for her, she will be bankrupt within a week." It was a masterstroke. It was ruthless. It was exactly what my father would have wanted. He built this empire with sweat and blood. He would rather see it burn to the ground than see it looted by a gold digger who hated his daughter. Sterling pushed the silver USB drive toward me. "There is one more thing," he said. "Your father recorded this 2 weeks before he passed. He was in the hospital. He knew the end was coming. He asked me to give this to you only when the Omega Protocol was activated. He said you would need it for the final battle." I picked up the drive. It felt cold metal against my skin. "Do I have to watch it now?" I asked. "I think you should," Sterling said. "It will give you the strength you need for tomorrow. Because tomorrow, they are going to come for you with everything they have. They are going to lie. They are going to scream. You need to remember why you are doing this." He opened a laptop and turned it toward me. I plugged the drive in. A video file popped up. It was titled simply, "For My Girl." I clicked play. The screen filled with my father's face. He was sitting in his hospital bed wearing his favorite silk pajamas. He looked thin. His skin was gray. The tremors in his hands were visible as he adjusted the camera. But his eyes were bright and sharp and full of the fire that had built a billion-dollar company. He looked into the lens and smiled. "Hey kiddo," he said. His voice was raspy but strong. Tears sprang to my eyes instantly. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob. "If you are watching this, it means I am gone. And it means things have gone bad. It means Dante let me down again, and it means Beatrice chose him over you. Again." He sighed, a heavy rattling sound. "I am sorry, Zara. I am so sorry I left you with this mess. A father should leave his children peace, not a war. But I know my family. I know their weaknesses. Dante has a good heart, but he is weak. He lets people use him. And that wife of his, Tiffany, she is a shark. I saw the way she looked at the books when she thought I was sleeping. She does not love him. She loves the lifestyle." He leaned closer to the camera. "I need you to know something. I did not give you the company because you are the reliable one. I did not give you the company because I needed a babysitter for your brother. I gave you the company because you are the best. You are smarter than me, Zara. You are tougher than me. You took my old-school trucking business and turned it into a modern logistics powerhouse. You did that, not me." He pointed a shaking finger at the screen. "Do not let them take it from you. Do not let them guilt you. Your mother will try to use family loyalty against you. She will say you are being cruel. She will say you are destroying the family. But you are not destroying it. You are saving it. You are saving the legacy. You are saving the jobs of the 500 families who depend on us." He paused and wiped his mouth with a tissue. "I have a secret for you, Zara. A weapon. If they try to fight you on the will, if they try to drag you into court, I want you to look in the safe, the hidden safe in the floor of my home office. You know the combination. It is your birthday. Inside there is a blue folder. It contains the medical records from Dante accident in 2018. I frowned at the screen. I knew about the accident. Dante had totaled his car. He had broken his leg. Why was that a weapon? My father continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Tiffany has been telling people she is pregnant. She told me the day before I died. She thought it would make me change the will. She thought if she was carrying the heir, I would give everything to Dante." He chuckled. It was a dark, wheezing sound. "But she does not know. She does not know what happened in that accident. The doctors told me. They told Dante. But he was too ashamed to tell her. He is sterile, Zara. The accident crushed his chances of ever having children. It is biologically impossible for him to be a father." My jaw dropped. I stared at the screen in shock. "So if she says she is pregnant," my father said, a mischievous glint in his eye, "she is lying. Or she has been stepping out. Either way, that baby is not a Elijah. And that is your checkmate." He leaned back against the pillows, looking exhausted. The effort of speaking was taking its toll. "I love you, Zara. I have always been proud of you. You were the son I wanted, and the daughter I needed. You are the king now. Long live the queen." The video ended. The screen went black. I sat there for a long time. The tears were flowing freely now, hot and fast down my cheeks. I did not wipe them away. I let them fall. I let the grief wash over me. I missed him so much it felt like a physical ache in my chest. He had been my only ally in a house full of strangers. But beneath the grief, there was something else. A fire. A burning, cold resolve. My father had given me everything. He had given me the assets. He had given me the legal authority. And now he had given me the truth. Tiffany was not just a thief. She was a liar. And a cheater. She was using a fake pregnancy to try and steal my birthright. She was playing on my mother's desperate desire for a grandchild to manipulate her into betraying me. It was despicable. It was unforgivable. I looked at Sterling. He was watching me quietly, offering me a handkerchief. I took it and dried my face. "You knew I asked. About the medical records." Sterling nodded. I drafted the medical power of attorney. I knew. Elijah wanted you to hear it from him. I stood up. I smoothed down my yoga pants. I felt different. I felt taller. The doubt that had been nagging at me, the little voice that said, maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should just walk away. That voice was gone. Silenced by my father's own words. They want a war. I said, my voice steady. They want to play dirty. Fine. I can play dirty. Sterling smiled. He closed the binder. I have scheduled the reading of the will for tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in the main conference room at my office. I have invited everyone. Tiffany, Dante, your mother, and the board of directors. Good, I said. Make sure the sheriff is there too. I have a feeling we are going to need him. Why? Sterling asked. Because when I am done with her, I said, picking up the USB drive, she is going to wish she had stayed in the parking lot looking for those keys. She is going to wish she had never met the Elijah family. I walked toward the door. I had a lot to do. I had to go to my parents' house. I had to open a safe. I had to get a blue folder. And then I had to pick out an outfit. My father said he hated it when I wore black. He said I should wear something bright, something bold. I knew exactly what to wear. I had a red dress. Blood red. It was the color of power. It was the color of warning. It was the color of a woman who was done apologizing. I turned back to Sterling one last time. Mr. Sterling, I said, do me a favor. Anything, Zara. Make sure the coffee is hot tomorrow, and make sure there are plenty of tissues. My mother is going to need them. I walked out into the night air. The rain had stopped. The air was crisp and clean. I got into my rental car and drove toward the city lights. I was not Zara the victim anymore. I was not Zara the overlooked daughter. I was the CEO of Shadow Corp. I was the keeper of the secrets. And tomorrow I was going to bring the house down. I sat in my home office surrounded by screens. The monitors were my window into the collapse of the empire I had built. The stock price was in freefall. The creditors were circling like vultures. And Tiffany was getting desperate. Desperate people are dangerous, but they are also predictable. When the money runs out, narcissists do not reflect on their spending habits. They do not look for jobs. They look for a new host to parasite off of. And since I had locked the bank accounts and seized the company assets, Tiffany needed a new leverage point. She found it on the 6 o'clock news. I watched as the local reporter stood outside the gates of the Elijah estate, my mother's house, the house my father built with his first million. It was the only significant asset that was not held by Shadow Corp. It belonged to Beatrice. The camera zoomed in. Tiffany walked out of the front door. She was not wearing her power suit today. She was wearing a soft, flowy pastel dress. She had her hand resting protectively over her stomach. She walked up to the reporters. She wiped a fake tear from her eye. I just want to ask for privacy in this difficult time, she said, leaning into the microphone. The stress that Zara has caused this family is immeasurable. But we are staying strong. We have to. Because I have just received wonderful news. She paused for dramatic effect. She looked at Dante, who was standing behind her looking like a ghost. I am pregnant, she announced. The reporters went wild. Flashes popped, questions shouted. I am carrying the next generation of the Elijah legacy. Tiffany continued patting her flat stomach. Dante's son, the true heir. And we are just asking Zara if she has any heart left to unlock the accounts so I can afford the medical care this baby needs. Do not punish an innocent child because you are jealous, Zara. I stared at the screen. I did not throw my coffee mug. I did not scream. I just felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. A pregnancy. It was the nuclear option. It was the oldest trick in the gold digger's handbook. If you cannot secure the bag, secure the bloodline. But there was a problem. A big problem. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number I had not used in years. It belonged to a man named Mr. Vance. He was a private investigator. He was expensive. He was discreet. and he hated liars. Mr. Vance, I said when he answered. It is Zara Elijah. I saw the news, he said. His voice was like gravel in a blender. Do you want me to find out if she bought the pregnancy test at Dollar General or CVS? I want you to find out everything I said. I want to know what she eats. I want to know who she talks to. I want to know if she sneezes. And most importantly, I want to know if there is actually a baby, or if that bump is just a lunch she has not digested yet. I am on it, Vance said. I hung up. The pregnancy announcement was not just for the public. It was a weapon aimed at one specific person. My mother. Beatrice was obsessed with lineage. She was obsessed with the idea of a grandson carrying the family name. Tiffany knew this. Tiffany knew that if she claimed to be carrying the heir, my mother would give her anything. And there was only one thing left to give. I pulled up the security cameras for the main house. I had installed them years ago for my parents' safety. My mother knew they were there, but she often forgot. I watched the living room feed. Beatrice was sitting on the sofa weeping. She was holding Tiffany's hands. Tiffany was kneeling on the floor in front of her, looking up with wide, pleading eyes. Mom, Tiffany said. I could hear the audio clearly. We have to protect this baby. Zara has cut us off. We have no cash. The lawyers say it could take months to break the trust. What if I get sick? What if the stress causes a miscarriage? Beatrice sobbed. I won't let that happen. I won't let anything happen to my grandbaby. Then sign the house over to me, Tiffany said. Her voice dropped low, urgent. Just put it in my name, just for safekeeping. If I own the house, I can take out a line of credit against it. I can pay the doctors. I can pay the security to keep us safe from the reporters. It is for the baby, Mom. It is for Dante's son. I watched my mother waver. This house was her pride and joy. It was where she raised us. It was worth $5 million free and clear. But Dante was sitting in the corner staring at the floor. He was not stopping her. He was letting his wife manipulate his mother out of her last safety net because he was too cowardly to tell the truth. Beatrice looked at Dante. Is this what you want, son? She asked. Dante looked up. He looked trapped. We need the money, Mom, he whispered. Beatrice nodded slowly. She stood up. She walked to the desk in the corner. She pulled out a folder. It was the deed. I grabbed my keys. I ran to the door. I had to stop her. But then I stopped. My hand hovered over the doorknob. If I rushed over there, if I burst in and screamed that Tiffany was a liar, would Beatrice believe me? No. She would see me as the villain. She would see me as the jealous, barren sister trying to kill her joy. She had already chosen her side. I had to let her sign. I had to let her lose it. It was the only way she would ever learn. I walked back to the screen. I watched my mother sign the deed. I watched Tiffany smile as she took the paper. It was a smile of pure, predatory triumph. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Goodbye, childhood home. 2 days later, Mr. Vance called me. I have a package for you, he said. Meet me at the Waffle House on Piedmont. I sat in the booth at the back of the diner. Mr. Vance slid a thick manila envelope across the sticky table. You were right to be suspicious, he said, pouring syrup on his pancakes. She is not acting like a pregnant woman. He opened the envelope. He laid out the photos like a winning poker hand. Photo 1. Tiffany sitting on the balcony of a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. In her hand was a glass of brown liquid. Whiskey. Photo 2. Tiffany holding a vape pen, exhaling a thick cloud of smoke. Photo 3. Tiffany walking into room 204 of the motel. She was not alone. She was with a man. He was huge, muscles on muscles. He was wearing a tight t-shirt that said, Gold's Gym. Who is he? I asked. His name is Chad, Vance said. He is a personal trainer. He is 24 years old, and according to my sources, he has been seeing Tiffany for 6 months. Dante spends his nights at the poker table. Tiffany spends her nights at the gym, Or rather, with the gym equipment. I stared at the photo. She was cheating on my brother. Of course she was. But that is not the smoking gun, Vance said. He reached into the envelope again. He pulled out a medical file. She went to a clinic yesterday, he said. A cash-only place in Strip Mall. She paid the receptionist $500 to print something for her. He handed me a piece of paper. It was an ultrasound image. A grainy black and white picture of a fetus. It looked real. Look closer, Vance said. Look at the date stamp in the corner. I squinted. The date was smudged, but visible. 2014. She bought a fake ultrasound off the internet, Vance said. I traced the image. It is a stock photo. You can buy it for $5 on Getty Images. She printed it out on thermal paper to make it look authentic. I felt a surge of adrenaline. She was not pregnant. It was all a lie. A lie to steal the house. A lie to garner public sympathy. But Vance was not done. There is one more thing, he said. And this is the one that is going to bury her. He pulled out a blue folder. It looked old. The edges were worn. It was stamped with the logo of the Atlanta Trauma Center. When you hired me, you told me to look into everything, Vance said. You mentioned Dante car accident in 2018. The one where he broke his leg. Yes, I said. What about it? I have a friend in records, Vance said. We pulled the full surgical report, not just the orthopedic notes, the full trauma scan. He opened the blue folder. He pointed to a paragraph highlighted in yellow. Patient sustained severe crushing injuries to the pelvic region, the report read. Emergency surgery required to repair internal hemorrhaging. Bilateral orchiectomy performed due to necrotic tissue damage. I read the words. I read them again. I knew what they meant. I had taken medical terminology in college. Bilateral orchiectomy, removal of both testicles. I looked at Vance. My mouth was open. Dante is sterile, Vance said. He has been sterile for 5 years. He cannot have children. It is biologically impossible. I sat back in the booth. The noise of the diner faded away. My father knew. That was why he recorded the video. That was why he told me to look in the safe. He knew. He paid the hospital bills. He covered up the extent of the injuries to protect Dante's pride. Dante was so ashamed he never told anyone, not even his wife. Especially not his wife. So Tiffany did not know. She thought she could fake a pregnancy and claim it was Dante's. She thought she could pass off a fake baby, or maybe even get pregnant by this Chad guy and pass it off as an heir. But she had walked into a trap she did not even know existed. If she was pregnant, it wasn't Dante. And if she wasn't pregnant, she was committing fraud. Either way, she was finished. I gathered the photos. I gathered the medical report. I put them all back into the envelope. This was it. This was the checkmate. Thank you, Mr. Vance, I said. I paid him in cash. I walked out to my rental car. I held the envelope against my chest. It felt heavy. It felt like a weapon. I drove back to my apartment. I had one more stop to make before the reading of the will tomorrow. I had to go to my father's office. The real office. The one at the house. I needed the original copy of that medical report. The one Dad kept in the floor safe. The one Vance found a copy of, but I needed the original with the wet ink signatures. I drove to the estate. It was dark. The gates were closed, but I still had the code. I parked down the street. I walked up the driveway. I saw lights on in the living room. I could see shadows moving. Beatrice and Tiffany were probably celebrating, probably drinking champagne and toasting to the new house they had stolen. I slipped around the back. I used my key to the patio door. I crept into the library. The rug was heavy. I rolled it back. The safe was there embedded in the floorboards. I spun the dial. Right to my birth month. Left to my birthday. Right to my birth year. Click. The heavy door swung open. It was empty. My heart stopped. I reached inside. Nothing. No cash, no bonds, and no blue folder. Panic rose in my throat. Had Tiffany found it? Had she destroyed it? Then I saw it. A small piece of paper taped to the inside of the door. It was a note. In my father's shaky handwriting. Zara, if you are reading this, you are looking for the gun. I moved it. I gave it to the only person in this house who has never lied to me. Check the cookie jar. Love, Dad. I almost laughed. The cookie jar. I crept into the kitchen. It was risky. The kitchen was close to the living room. I could hear their voices. I am telling you, Mom, Tiffany was saying. This house is going to be the perfect collateral. We can get a $5 million loan against it tomorrow. That pays off the debt, gets the trucks moving, and buys me a new wardrobe for the baby bump photos. You are so smart, Tiffany, my mother cooed. Zara would never have thought of that. I clenched my teeth. I walked to the counter. There it was. The ceramic pig cookie jar. The one I used to steal Oreos from when I was 6. I lifted the lid. It was full of flour. I dug my hand in. My fingers brushed against something plastic. I pulled it out. It was a Ziploc bag. Inside was the blue folder. I held it up. It was covered in white dust. I heard footsteps approaching the kitchen. I need a refill, Tiffany said. I shoved the bag into my jacket. I ducked behind the kitchen island. Tiffany walked in. She was wearing a silk robe. She walked right past me. She opened the fridge. She poured more champagne. She did not see me. She was too busy counting her chickens before they hatched. She walked back out. I waited 10 seconds. Then I bolted. I ran out the back door. I ran down the driveway. I got into my car. I sat there breathing hard. I looked at the blue folder. It was stamped Top Secret, 2018. I had it. I had the receipts. I had the truth. And tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I was going to serve it cold. I started the car. The cards are on the table. And I have a royal flush. It was 2:14 in the morning when the silent alarm on my phone vibrated against the nightstand. I was not asleep. I had not really slept in days. I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling and counting the hours until the final showdown. I picked up the phone. The notification was from the perimeter sensors. Intruder alert. Zone 4. Kitchen entry. I did not panic. I did not call the police. I had expected this. Desperate people do not sleep. They do not plan. They act on impulse. And Tiffany had run out of impulses. She had run out of money. She had run out of lies. The only thing she had left was theft. I put on my silk robe. I tied the sash tight. I walked over to the wine fridge in my bedroom and poured a glass of Cabernet. It was a vintage my father had bought for my 30th birthday. It tasted like dark cherries and iron. I checked the camera feed on my tablet. A figure was fumbling with the lock on the back door. He was wearing all black, but he was wearing it wrong. The ski mask was crooked. He tripped over the garden hose. He was using a crowbar on a biometric lock. It was pathetic. It was Dante. I watched him struggle for another minute. He finally managed to smash the glass pane next to the handle. He reached in and unlocked the door. He stepped into my kitchen. He did not get far. As soon as his foot hit the hallway rug, the floodlights blinded him. 2 men stepped out of the shadows of the living room. They were my private security detail, former Navy SEALs I had hired after the funeral. They did not shout, they did not draw weapons, they simply moved with a terrifying efficiency. One of them swept Dante's legs, the other secured his hands behind his back with a zip tie. It took 3 seconds. I took a sip of wine and walked down the stairs. The lights in the living room were dim. Dante was face down on my Persian rug, wheezing. The security guard looked at me. I nodded. He hauled Dante up and dropped him onto the leather armchair. I sat opposite him on the sofa. I crossed my legs. I swirled the wine in my glass. "Hello, brother," I said softly. Dante was hyperventilating. He had lost his mask in the scuffle. His face was pale and sweaty. He looked like a cornered animal. "Zara, please," he gasped. "Please do not call the cops." I looked at him, really looked at him. This was the boy I had shared a treehouse with. This was the boy who used to hold my hand when it thundered. And now he was breaking into my house in the middle of the night to rob me. I am not calling the cops, Dante, I said. Not yet. First, you are going to tell me what you are looking for. He shook his head, tears streaming down his face. I cannot. She will kill me. Who will kill you? I asked. The loan sharks. Or your wife. Both, he whispered. I leaned forward. What did she send you for, Dante? He looked down at his bound hands. The hard drive, he said. The cold storage wallet. The one with the Bitcoin. And the corporate seal. The physical stamp. I laughed. It was a cold sound in the quiet house. She wants the Bitcoin. Of course she does. It is the only asset she cannot freeze or trace. And the seal. She wants to stamp fake invoices to try and drain the last few dollars from the operating accounts before the banks close them for good. She is desperate, Zara, Dante said. His voice was a high, thin whine. The guys with the tattoos came back to the house tonight. They sat in the living room. They touched her belly. They told her if they did not get a payment by tomorrow noon, there would be no baby. I felt a flicker of disgust. The loan sharks were monsters. But Tiffany was the one who had invited them into our lives. So she sent you here, I said. To steal from your sister. To commit a felony. Did she tell you that this house has silent alarms linked directly to the precinct? Did she tell you that if my security team had not been here, the police would have been? You would be in a cell right now, Dante. Is she worth prison? She knows, Dante blurted out. He started crying harder. Snot was running down his nose. It was ugly. She knows about 2018 Zara. She knows about the money. I paused. I took another sip of wine. What money? I asked calmly. The 5 million, Dante said. The money I took from the operating fund. The money I lost on the ponies. She has the records. She found an old bank statement in Dad's office. She said if I do not do what she says, she is going to turn me in to the FBI for embezzlement. She said she will testify against me. She said she will tell them I stole it and Dad tried to cover it up. He looked at me, his eyes wide with terror. She owns me, Zara. She said I will go to jail for 20 years. That is why I have to do this. I cannot go to jail. I will die in there. I sat back. I looked at my brother. My stupid, gullible brother. Tiffany was good. I had to give her that. She was a master manipulator. She had found his darkest secret, and she was using it to turn him into her puppet. She was using his fear to make him commit crimes for her. But there was one thing Tiffany did not understand. She did not understand me, and she certainly did not understand how good I was at my job. I stood up. I walked over to the fireplace. I picked up a silver letter opener. Dante flinched away from me. Relax, I said. I walked behind him. I sliced through the zip ties. His hands fell free. He rubbed his wrists, looking up at me in confusion. Pour yourself a drink, Dante, I said, pointing to the bar. You look like you need it. He stumbled to the bar. He poured a glass of whiskey with shaking hands. He downed it in one gulp. Zara, I am sorry, he said. I truly am, but you do not understand. She has the proof. No, Dante, I said. You do not understand. I walked over to my bookshelf. I pulled out a thick leather-bound volume. It was not a book. It was a ledger. Do you remember what happened after you stole that money? I asked. Dante nodded. Dad screamed at me. He told me I was out of the will. Then he had a heart attack scare. And then it just went away. He never talked about it again. I thought he just paid it back. He did pay it back, I said. But he did not just write a check and forget about it. Dad was a businessman, Dante, and I am a forensic accountant. We do not leave loose ends. I opened the ledger. I turned to a page marked October 2018. When you took that money, you committed a federal crime, I explained. Embezzlement. Wire fraud. You are right. You could have gone to jail for 20 years. Dante whimpered. But I continued. Dad did not want his son in prison. So we fixed it. We did not hide it. Hiding it is a crime too. We reclassified it. I tapped the page. See this entry here. $5 million. Outflow to Dante Elijah. It is not listed as theft. It is listed as a retroactive performance bonus and a shareholder loan. Dante stared at the page. A loan, he asked. Yes, I said. We converted the stolen money into a legal loan from the company to you. We paid the taxes on it. We filed the IRS forms. It is all legal. It is all above board. But I never signed a loan agreement, Dante said. Yes, you did, I said. You signed a stack of papers Dad put in front of you while you were high on painkillers after your accident. You did not read them. You just signed. Dante looked like he was going to be sick. So I don't owe the money to the government? He asked. No, I said. You owe it to the company. Or rather, you owed it to the company. But since the company has been dissolved and the assets transferred to Shadow Corp, that debt is now an internal write-off. I closed the ledger with a snap. Tiffany is blackmailing you with a ghost Dante. She is threatening you with a crime that does not exist anymore. I cleaned it up, I sanitized it, because unlike your wife, I actually protect this family. Dante slid down the front of the bar until he was sitting on the floor. He put his head in his hands. She lied to me, he whispered. She told me she had me. She told me I was going down. She lied because she needs you, I said. She needs you to be her soldier. She needs you to take the fall. Think about it, Dante. If you had stolen that Bitcoin tonight and the police caught you, who would go to jail? You, not her. She would say she knew nothing about it. She would say you were a rogue addict stealing from his sister. She was setting you up, Dante, just like she set you up with the will. The realization washed over him. I could see it in his eyes, the betrayal, the shame. He looked up at me. What do I do, Zara? She is waiting for me. She's waiting for the money. If I go back empty-handed, she will scream. She will call the loan sharks. Let her scream, I said. Let her call whoever she wants. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a small velvet pouch. Here, I said, tossing it to him. He caught it. He opened it. Inside was a USB drive. Not the one with the Bitcoin. A cheap one I had bought at Walgreens. What is this? He asked. It is a decoy, I said. It is encrypted with a military-grade self-destruct sequence. Tell her it is the Bitcoin wallet. Tell her she needs to plug it into the main server at the office to unlock it. Tell her the password is her birthday. What will it do? Dante asked. It will upload a virus, I said. A nasty one. It will not destroy data, but it will brick the hardware. It will turn every computer in that office into a paperweight. It will buy us time, and it will keep her busy until 10 a.m. tomorrow. Dante stood up. He clutched the pouch like it was a lifeline. Why are you helping me? He asked. After everything I did. I let her fire you. I let her take your car. I forged the will. I looked at him. I saw the weak, broken man he had become, but I also saw my brother. Because Dad asked me to, I said. And because I need you to do one thing for me. Anything, Zara. Anything. I need you to show up tomorrow, I said. At the reading of the will, at Mr. Sterling's office, 10 a.m. Bring Tiffany, bring Mom, and bring that fake will she made you sign. I cannot face her, Dante said. Not after tonight. You have to, I said. You have to be there when the curtain falls. Because tomorrow, Dante, you are going to be free. But only if you show up. I walked to the front door. I unlocked it. I opened it to the night. The rain had started again. A cold, drizzly rain. Go home to your wife, Dante. Give her the drive. Tell her you stole it. Tell her you are a hero. Let her think she won for one more night. Dante walked to the door. He stopped. He tried to hug me, but I stepped back. Not yet, I said. We are not there yet. He nodded. He walked out into the rain. He looked small. He looked defeated. But for the first time in years, he looked sober. I locked the door. I reset the alarm. I went back to my wine. I finished the glass. Tiffany thought she had leverage. She thought she had a gun to my brother's head. She did not know I had unloaded the gun 5 years ago. She was playing checkers. I was playing three-dimensional chess. I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. 7 hours to go. I went upstairs. I needed to sleep. I needed to be fresh, because tomorrow I was going to break my family's heart, and then I was going to save them from themselves. The conference room at Sterling & Associates was cold enough to preserve meat. It was a massive space lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Atlanta skyline, but nobody was looking at the view. The air was thick with the scent of expensive leather furniture and the sharp, metallic tang of fear. I sat at the head of the mahogany table wearing my blood-red dress. It was a violent splash of color in a room full of gray suits. Mr. Sterling sat to my right, his hands folded calmly on top of a thick file. Behind us sat the sheriff of Fulton County, his arms crossed over his chest, his badge catching the light. To my left sat 3 representatives from the First National Bank. They looked like undertakers, waiting to measure a corpse. They had their laptops open, ready to seize assets, ready to foreclose, ready to tear Elijah Logistics apart piece by piece. And then there was the other side of the table. My mother Beatrice sat huddled in her mink coat, even though it was 70 degrees outside. She looked small and frail, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped bird. Dante sat next to her wearing the same wrinkled suit he had worn the night before. He would not meet my eyes. He was staring at his hands, which were shaking so badly they vibrated against the wood table. And then there was Tiffany. She had tried to pull herself together. She was wearing a black dress today, trying to play the grieving widow, but it was cut too low, and her jewelry was too loud. She had hired a lawyer, a man named Mr. Cobb, who wore a suit that looked like it came from a discount rack and smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. He was sweating. He knew he was out of his league. Mr. Cobb cleared his throat. It sounded like a dry leaf crunching. "We are here to assert the rights of my client, Mrs. Tiffany Elijah, the acting CEO and wife of the sole heir, Dante Elijah," he said. His voice wavered. "We are in possession of the true last will and testament of the deceased." Tiffany slammed a piece of paper onto the table. It was the same crumpled napkin-looking document she had waved in my face at the funeral. "This is the original," she hissed. She pointed a manicured finger at me. "That woman is squatting on my property. She has stolen corporate assets. She has locked us out of our accounts. I want her arrested." Mr. Sterling did not even blink. He did not look at the paper. He did not look at Mr. Cobb. He looked at the clock on the wall. "It is 10 a.m., he said. His voice was deep and resonant. "We will begin." Tiffany stood up. She leaned over the table. "Did you hear me?" she screamed. "This is the will. Dante inherits everything. $500 million. The trucks, the house, the cash. It is all his. And since I am his wife and the mother of his unborn child, it is mine to manage." The bankers exchanged a look. One of them typed something quickly on his laptop. Mr. Sterling adjusted his glasses. He reached for a small remote control lying on the table. "Mrs. Elijah," he said, speaking to Tiffany. "You claim that document was written by Elijah on his deathbed." "Yes," Tiffany said. "He wrote it with his last ounce of strength. He wanted to make sure his legacy was safe from her." She jerked her head toward me. "I see," Sterling said. "And you claim he was of sound mind. He was perfectly lucid." Tiffany lied. She looked at Dante. "Tell them Dante. Tell them Dad wrote it." Dante flinched. He looked at the sheriff. He looked at me. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Sterling pushed a button on the remote. At the far end of the room, a panel in the wall slid open, revealing a 100-inch screen. The room dimmed. The hum of the projector filled the silence. I have a witness, Sterling said. He would like to testify regarding the validity of that document. Tiffany scoffed. A witness? Who? Some nurse you paid off? No, Sterling said. The testator himself. The screen flickered to life. The image was high definition. It was bright and clear. It showed my father sitting in his home office, not the hospital bed. His office. He was sitting in his favorite leather chair. He was wearing his smoking jacket. In one hand he held a cigar unlit. In the other he held a glass of amber liquid. It was whiskey. My father was not supposed to drink. His doctors had forbidden it. But there he was holding it like a trophy. He looked into the camera. His face was gaunt, ravaged by the Parkinson's, but his eyes were alive. They were dancing with a fierce, intelligent light. He raised the glass to the lens. Cheers, he said. The sound of his voice filled the room. It was strong. It was the voice that had commanded fleets of trucks and negotiated with unions. It was the voice of a titan. Beatrice let out a small whimper. She covered her mouth with her hand. On the screen, my father took a sip of the whiskey. He savored it. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them and looked straight at the camera. He looked straight at Tiffany. "Hello, Tiffany," he said. Tiffany gasped. She fell back into her chair. Her face went the color of ash. "If you are watching this video," my father said, his voice smooth and conversational, "it means I am dead. And it means you have done exactly what I knew you would do." He swirled the whiskey in the glass. "It means you have tried to take the company. It means you have tried to fire Zara. And it means you have produced a piece of paper claiming that I left everything to my son." He paused. And then he did something that made the hair on my arms stand up. He chuckled. It was not a happy laugh. It was a low rumbling sound, deep in his chest. It was the sound of a predator watching prey walk into a trap. It was mocking. It was cruel. It was glorious. "I am laughing, Tiffany," he said, "because you are so predictable. You saw the suits, you saw the cars, you saw the big building with my name on it, and you thought you hit the jackpot. You thought you married a gold mine." He leaned forward. The camera zoomed in on his face. The humor vanished from his eyes, replaced by cold, hard steel. "You did not marry a gold mine, Tiffany. You married a debt. You married a liability. You married a man who has not made an honest dollar in 10 years. Beatrice started to sob. "Elijah, please," she whispered to the screen. "Don't say it." He ignored her. He was speaking from the grave, and he had a lot to say. "You think Dante is the heir," my father continued. "Dante is my son, and I love him, but Dante is an addict. He is a gambler. He has a hole in his pocket that no amount of money can fill." My father reached down beside his chair. He picked up a thick stack of papers. He held them up to the camera. "Do you know what these are, Tiffany?" he asked. "These are Dante's marker notes. These are the debts I paid off in 2018. $5 million. That is what it cost to keep your husband out of prison. That is what it cost to keep his knees from being broken by the cartel." Tiffany looked at Dante. Her eyes were wide with horror. Dante was shrinking in his chair, trying to make himself invisible. "I did not give him an inheritance," my father said. "I gave him a bailout, and in exchange for that bailout he signed something." My father dropped the papers. He picked up another document. It was blue. "He signed a conservatorship," he said. The word hung in the room. The bankers started typing furiously. Mr. Cobb looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "He signed away his rights," my father said. "He signed away his right to own property. He signed away his right to enter into contracts. He signed away his right to vote on the board. He is a ward of the estate, Tiffany. He is legally a child." My father took another sip of whiskey. He smiled again, but this time it was sad. "You thought you were marrying the Prince of Atlanta. But you married a pauper. Dante owns nothing. The car he drives, leased by the company. The house you live in, owned by Beatrice. The clothes on his back. Paid for by me. Tiffany was shaking her head. No, she whispered. No, that is not true. He is the vice president. He has an office. He has a playpen, my father said on the screen, answering her as if he could hear her. I gave him a title so he would feel like a man. I gave him a salary so he could buy you nice things. But he has no power. He never had power. He pointed a finger at the camera. And that will you are holding. The one you forged. I know you forged it because I have not been able to hold a pen in 5 years. Look at my hands, Tiffany. He held up his hands. They were trembling violently. The whiskey sloshed in the glass. I cannot write my name, he said. I cannot button my shirt. Do you really think a judge is going to believe I wrote a 2-page will in perfect cursive? You are not just greedy, Tiffany. You are stupid. And I hate stupidity more than I hate greed. Tiffany looked at the paper in front of her. She looked at the signature. She realized in that moment that she had walked into a buzzsaw. Now my father said, his voice softening slightly. Let us talk about who actually owns the company. He put the glass down. He looked directly into the lens. He looked at me. Zara. I sat up straighter. It felt like he was in the room. Zara owns it, he said. All of it. She owns the trucks. She owns the buildings. She owns the software. She owns the debt. She owns the future. He paused. I transferred the assets to Shadow Corp 5 years ago. I did it to protect the family from Dante. And I did it to protect the family from you, Tiffany. I knew you were coming. I saw you looking at the balance sheets at the Christmas party. I saw you calculating. So I moved the cheese. He laughed again. That dark, dry chuckle. You are fighting for the wrapper, Tiffany. But Zara already ate the candy. The screen went black for a second. Then it flickered back on. My father looked tired now. The energy was draining out of him. One last thing he said. To my wife, Beatrice. My mother looked up, her face wet with tears. Beatrice. I know you are angry, he said. I know you wanted Dante to have it. You always spoiled him. You always protected him. But you cannot protect a man from himself. And you cannot run a company on dreams. Zara is the only one who can keep the lights on. If you go against her, if you side with Tiffany, you will lose everything. The house, the pension, the country club, everything. He leaned back and closed his eyes. Trust the girl, Beatrice. She is the only man in the family. The video ended. The screen went white. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb crater. I looked at Tiffany. She was frozen. Her mouth was slightly open. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. The arrogance was gone. The Queen Tea persona had evaporated. All that was left was a woman who realized she had bet her life on a losing horse. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. He opened the file in front of him. As you have just heard, he said, his voice calm and professional, the estate of Elijah Logistics is insolvent. The operating company has 0 assets and $50 million in liabilities. However, the assets required to run the business are securely held by Shadow Corp, which is solely owned by Ms. Zara Elijah. He looked at the bankers. Gentlemen, I believe this answers your questions regarding the credit facility. The previous leadership, he gestured vaguely at Tiffany, has been removed. Ms. Zara is prepared to assume control of the assets and restructure the debt under the new entity. The lead banker nodded. He looked relieved. He closed his laptop. We are willing to work with Ms. Zara, he said. We have a long history with her. We trust her numbers. Tiffany stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. This is a trick, she whispered. It is a deep fake. You made that video with AI. It is not real. I stood up too. I smoothed the front of my red dress. I picked up the thick blue folder I had stolen from the cookie jar. It is real, Tiffany, I said. And so is this. I threw the blue folder onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud right in front of her. "That is the conservatorship agreement," I said. "Dated October 2018. Signed by Dante Elijah. Signed by Elijah. And witnessed by a judge." I opened the folder. I pointed to the signature page. "Dante," I said, looking at my brother. Tell her what you signed." Dante was crying. He had his head in his hands. "I signed it," he sobbed. "I signed it all. I had to. The guys were going to kill me. Dad paid them off. But he took my life. He took my name. Tiffany looked down at the document. She read the words: Ward of the State. Financial incompetence. Power of attorney granted to Zara Elijah. She looked at me. Her eyes were wild. He is a child," she stammered. "Legally, he is a child." "Yes," I said. "And since he is legally incompetent, he cannot inherit anything. He cannot sign a contract. He cannot appoint a CEO. And he certainly cannot marry you without the permission of his guardian." I smiled. It was the smile my father had given me. "And guess who his guardian is?" "Tiffany." She stared at me. "It is you," she whispered. "It is me," I said. "I am his guardian. Which means technically I am your boss. I am your landlord. And I am the one who decides if Dante gets his $2,000 a month allowance." Tiffany slumped back into her chair. She looked like a puppet whose strings had been cut. "But wait," she said. Her eyes darted around the room looking for a lifeline. She put her hand on her stomach. "The baby," she said. Her voice gained a sudden desperate strength. "The baby. I am pregnant. I am carrying Dante's son, the grandson of Elijah. You cannot starve a pregnant woman, Zara. The court won't allow it. This baby has rights. This baby is the heir." I looked at the bankers. They looked uncomfortable. A baby changed things. A baby created sympathy. But I was ready for this. I had the receipts. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the second folder. The one Mr. Vance had given me. I slid it across the table. "Open it, Tiffany," I said. She stared at it. She did not move. "Open it," I commanded. She opened it with a shaking hand. The first thing she saw was the photo of her smoking on the balcony. The second was the photo of her walking into the motel with Chad, the personal trainer. But those were just appetizers. "Turn the page," I said. She turned the page. She saw the medical report, the one from the trauma center. I watched her eyes scan the text. I watched her read the words bilateral orchiectomy. I watched her brain try to process what it meant. She looked up at Dante. "You," she whispered. Dante would not look at her. "Dante." I said, my voice cutting through the room like a knife. "Tell your wife about your accident. Tell her what you lost." Dante made a sound like a wounded animal. "I cannot have kids," he choked out. "I am sterile, Tiffany. I have been sterile for 5 years." The room exploded. The bankers gasped. Beatrice let out a scream of pure horror. The sheriff stepped forward, his hand moving to his belt. Tiffany stood there holding the report. She looked at Dante. She looked at the photos of Chad. So I asked, my voice calm, deadly, "If Dante cannot have children, and you are pregnant, then we have a very expensive question to answer." I pointed at her stomach. "Who is the father, Tiffany? Because it certainly isn't Elijah." Tiffany opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She looked at the door. She looked at the window. She realized there was no escape. I turned to the sheriff. "Sheriff," I said, "I would like to report a crime. Attempted fraud. Forgery. And I believe if you check her purse, you might find some company property she stole." The sheriff stepped forward. He took out his handcuffs. "Tiffany Elijah," he said, "you are under arrest." Tiffany screamed. She lunged at me across the table. Her nails were claws aimed at my face, but she never reached me. The sheriff grabbed her. He spun her around. He slammed her against the mahogany wall. Click, click. The handcuffs locked into place. I stood there in my red dress watching them drag her out. She was screaming obscenities. She was cursing my name. She was cursing Dante's name. I picked up my tea. I took a sip. It was still hot. I looked at Dante. I looked at my mother. They were both broken. They were both ruins. I looked at the screen where my father's face was frozen in a smile. "Thanks, Dad," I whispered. The king was dead. Long live the queen. The silence in the conference room was heavy and suffocating. It felt physical, like the air pressure had dropped before a tornado. The screen behind me had gone black, but my father's laughter seemed to still echo off the mahogany walls. Tiffany was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. Her chest was heaving. She looked like an animal that had just realized the trapdoor was closed. I stood up slowly. I smoothed the front of my red dress. The fabric felt cool under my palms. I picked up the blue folder I had taken from the cookie jar. It was thick. It was heavy. It was the weight of 5 years of secrets. I walked around the head of the table. I did not rush. I let the sound of my heels on the floor be the only noise in the room. Click, click, click. I stopped directly across from Tiffany. I looked down at her. "You want to talk about the law, Tiffany? You want to talk about rights? You want to talk about ownership?" I tossed the blue folder onto the table. It landed with a dull thud right in front of her. It slid across the polished wood and stopped inches from her shaking hands. "Open it," I said. She stared at it. She looked terrified. "Open it." I repeated, my voice cutting through the room like a razor. She reached out a trembling hand and flipped the cover open. The first page was stamped with the seal of the Fulton County Superior Court. It was dated October 14th, 2018. "Read the title, Tiffany," I said. "Read it out loud." She looked at the words. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She shook her head. "Read it," I commanded. "Order establishing permanent financial conservatorship," she whispered. Her voice was thin and reedy. "Louder," I said. "Order establishing permanent financial conservatorship," she said, her voice cracking. "In the matter of Dante Elijah." The bankers leaned forward. Mr. Cobb, her cheap lawyer, looked like he was about to be sick. Beatrice let out a low moan and covered her face with her hands. I looked at the bankers. "Gentlemen, you are wondering why the bank accounts were locked. You are wondering why Dante Elijah does not have access to his own inheritance. You are wondering why the vice president of the company needed his sister to co-sign for a lease on a Toyota." I pointed at the document. "Because my brother does not exist. Not legally, not financially." I looked at Dante. He was weeping silently, tears running down his face and dripping onto his expensive suit. A suit I paid for. "Tell them, Dante," I said. "Tell your wife who you really are." He could not speak. He just sobbed. "I will tell them for you," I said. I turned back to Tiffany. In 2018, Dante stole $5 million from the company operating fund. He wired it to an offshore sports betting syndicate. He lost it all in 48 hours. When the syndicate came to collect, he panicked. He tried to outrun them. He got in his car high on painkillers and he drove it into a concrete barrier at 90 miles an hour. I paused. I let the horror of it sink in. Dad saved his life. I continued. Dad paid off the syndicate to keep them from killing him in the hospital. Dad paid off the police to lose the blood test results so he would not go to prison for DUI. Dad paid back the $5 million to the company out of his own pocket so the shareholders would not find out. But Dad was a businessman, Tiffany, and he knew a bad investment when he saw one. He knew that if he let Dante keep control of his own life, Dante would be dead or in prison within a year. So he made a deal. I tapped the blue folder. "This is the deal. To avoid felony charges for embezzlement and wire fraud, Dante voluntarily surrendered his financial autonomy. He signed this document. It was witnessed by a judge. It was witnessed by 2 psychiatrists. It declares Dante Elijah legally incompetent to manage his own financial affairs. Tiffany was reading the document now. Her eyes were darting back and forth across the pages. She looked like she was trying to find a loophole. She looked like she was trying to find a way out. "There is no way out, Tiffany," I said. "Read paragraph 4. She looked at paragraph 4. "The ward shall have no authority to enter into contracts," she read. "No authority to buy or sell real property. No authority to access credit lines. No authority to marry without the consent of the conservator." She stopped. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wide with shock. "Marry?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "He needed permission to marry you." "Did he show you a permission slip, Tiffany? Did he show you a letter signed by his conservator allowing him to enter into a legal union?" She shook her head. "No. We just went to the courthouse." "Then your marriage license is voidable," I said. "It is a fraud. Just like everything else in your life." I leaned closer to her. "But that is not the best part. The best part is the money. You think you married a millionaire. You think you married the heir to the throne. But look at the allowance schedule. It is on page 10. Tiffany flipped to page 10. Her finger traced the lines. "Monthly stipend," she read. $2,000. $2,000, I repeated. "That is what he gets. That is what he is worth. That is the legal limit of cash Dante Elijah is allowed to handle without supervision. $2,000 a month. That is $24,000 a year. That is barely minimum wage, Tiffany." I laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. "You spent more than that on your shoes for the funeral. You spent more than that on the catering for your hostile takeover party. You have been burning through cash that you thought was his. But it wasn't his. It was mine." I pointed to the signature line at the bottom of the document. "Look at who the conservator is, Tiffany. Look at who holds the leash." She looked. "It says, Elijah Elijah," she said. "Keep reading," I said. "Look at the successor clause. In the event of the death or incapacitation of Elijah, the conservatorship transfers immediately and irrevocably to—" She stopped. She stared at the name. She stared at it like it was a ghost. "Zara Elijah," she whispered. "Me," I said. "I am his guardian, Tiffany. I am his keeper. I own his debt. I own his signature. I own his bank account. I own the shirt on his back. When he wants to buy a pack of gum, he has to ask me. When he wants to pay the electric bill, he has to ask me." I looked at Dante. "And for the last 5 years, I have been generous. I let him play the big shot. I gave him the company credit card with a $50,000 limit, and I paid the bill every month without asking questions. I leased the luxury cars in the company name and let him drive them. I let him live in Mom's house rent-free. I let him pretend he was a man." I turned back to Tiffany. "But you broke the rules, Tiffany. You tried to bite the hand that feeds you. You tried to fire the only person who was keeping the lights on, and now the lights are out." I grabbed the folder from the table. I snapped it shut. "Dante's signature on that will you forged? It is worthless. Even if it was real, it would be worthless. He has no legal standing to inherit. He has no legal standing to appoint a CEO. He has no legal standing to do anything except sit there and look pretty. You are not the CEO, Tiffany. You are not the wife of a billionaire. You are the unemployed partner of a ward of the state who lives on an allowance that wouldn't cover your skincare routine." The room was silent. The bankers were packing up their laptops. They had heard enough. They knew who the boss was. They knew where the power lay. Tiffany stood up slowly. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. She turned to Dante. Dante was still sitting there, his head in his hands, sobbing quietly. "Dante," she said. Her voice was trembling with rage. "Is this true?" Dante looked up. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked at me, then he looked at her. I didn't know how to tell you," he stammered. I thought if I just played along, if I just made you happy." "You lied to me," Tiffany screamed. It was a primal sound, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury. You told me you ran this company. You told me you were rich. You told me I would never have to worry about money again. I wanted you to love me, Dante cried. I wanted you to think I was somebody. I knew if I told you the truth, you would leave. I knew you only cared about the money. Tiffany stared at him, her face twisted into a mask of disgust. You are pathetic, she spat. You are a loser. You are a broke, useless loser. And then she did it. She pulled back her hand and she slapped him. It was a hard, vicious slap. The sound cracked through the silent conference room like a gunshot. Dante's head snapped to the side. A red mark bloomed on his cheek instantly. He didn't fight back. He didn't yell. He just started to cry harder. He curled in on himself like a child. I watched them. I watched the woman who had terrorized me for years assault my brother. I watched the brother who had betrayed me crumble into dust. And I felt nothing. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel satisfaction. I just felt cold. That is enough, I said. Tiffany turned on me. Her eyes were wild. Her hair was coming loose from her bun. You knew, she shrieked. You knew this whole time. You let me make a fool of myself. You let me spend money I didn't have. You set me up. I didn't set you up, Tiffany, I said calmly. You set yourself up. You walked into this room thinking you were a queen. But you didn't check the throne. You didn't check the locks. And you certainly didn't check the bank account. I looked at the sheriff. Sheriff, I think Mrs. Elijah is done here. And I think Mr. Elijah needs to be escorted off the premises. He is trespassing. And he is in violation of his conservatorship agreement, which states he is not allowed to enter corporate property without his guardian present. The sheriff stepped forward. Ma'am, he said to Tiffany, I need you to step away from him. Tiffany looked at the sheriff. She looked at me. She looked at the bankers. She realized she was alone. She realized she had lost everything. She grabbed her purse. She didn't look at Dante again. She didn't look at Beatrice. She walked to the door. I will sue you, she hissed at me as she passed. I will take everything. I smiled. You can't sue me, Tiffany. You can't afford a lawyer. Remember $2,000 a month, that doesn't buy a lot of billable hours. She slammed the door behind her. The glass rattled in the frame. I looked at Dante. Get out, Dante, I said. Go home. Wait for my call. And pray I am feeling generous when I write your check next month. Dante stood up. He wiped his face. He looked at me with eyes full of shame. I am sorry, Zara, he whispered. I really am. I know, I said. But sorry doesn't pay the bills. Goodbye, Dante. He walked out. He looked like a ghost. I turned to the bankers. Now, gentlemen, I said, sitting back down in the leather chair. Let us talk about restructuring that debt. I believe I have some assets you might be interested in. The lead banker smiled. He opened his laptop. We are listening, Ms. Zara. I looked at my mother. Beatrice was still sitting there. She hadn't moved. She hadn't spoken. She was staring at the empty chair where her son had been. She looked like a statue of grief. But I wasn't done yet. There was one more secret in the blue folder. One more card to play. And it was the one that was going to hurt the most. Because Tiffany wasn't just a gold digger. She was a liar. And she had made one mistake that no amount of crying could fix. She had claimed she was pregnant. And I knew for a fact that was impossible. At least not with Dante's baby. I reached for the remote. I am not finished yet, I said to the room. We have one more piece of business. And this one is personal. But I am pregnant, Tiffany screamed, her voice cracking with desperation as she clutched her stomach. This baby is the heir. This baby is the future of Elijah Logistics. You cannot touch me, Zara. The law protects pregnant women. The courts will never let you starve the mother of Dante's child. This baby proves everything. It proves our marriage is real. It proves I belong here. I watched her spiral. I watched her cling to the last life raft she thought she had. It was almost pitiful. Almost. But then I remembered the way she treated my father. I remembered the pink paint on the walls. I remembered the way she looked at me at the funeral, and any pity I felt evaporated like mist in the Atlanta sun. I picked up the remote control again. "You are right, Tiffany," I said. "A baby changes everything. A baby is a miracle. A baby is a legacy." I pressed the button. The screen behind me flickered back to life. "But there is just one problem," I said. "One tiny biological problem that my father knew about and that Dante knew about, but that you somehow missed in your rush to secure the bag." The screen displayed a new document. It was not a will. It was not a bank statement. It was a surgical report from the Atlanta Trauma Center dated November 2018. I stepped to the side so everyone could see it. "Read the diagnosis, Tiffany," I said. She stared at the screen. Her eyes were wide and wet with tears. She shook her head, refusing to process what she was seeing. "I will read it for you," I said, my voice filling the room. "Patient sustained catastrophic crushing injuries to the pelvic region during high-speed collision. Emergency intervention required to ligate internal hemorrhaging. Procedure performed bilateral orchiectomy." I paused. I let the medical terms hang in the air. "Do you know what that means, Tiffany?" She did not answer. She was trembling. "It means my brother is sterile," I said. "It means he has been biologically incapable of fathering a child for 5 years. The accident did not just break his leg, Tiffany. It took his future. It took his ability to give you that heir you are so desperate for." I looked at Dante. He was slumped in his chair, his face buried in his hands. He was making a low, keening sound, a sound of pure shame. "Dante," I said softly, "look at your wife." He looked up. His eyes were red and swollen. "Tell her," I said. "Tell her why you never bought condoms. Tell her why you never worried about birth control." "I thought she knew," Dante whispered. "I thought Mom told her. I thought everyone knew. I was too ashamed to say it out loud. I did not want her to look at me differently. I did not want her to think I was less of a man." Tiffany turned on him. Her face was a mask of horror. "You are sterile," she shrieked. "You knew. You knew this whole time and you let me play this game. You let me tell the world I was carrying your son. I did not know you were going to lie," Dante yelled back. "I did not know you were going to fake a pregnancy." "I am not faking it," Tiffany screamed. "I am pregnant. I have the morning sickness. I have the test results. I am carrying a baby." The room went deadly silent. I smiled. This was the moment. This was the kill shot. "If you are pregnant, Tiffany," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "then we have $1 million question." I clicked the remote one last time. A new image appeared on the screen. It was not a document. It was a photograph. A high-resolution surveillance photo taken by Mr. Vance. It showed Tiffany standing outside a motel room. She was wearing a trench coat, and she was kissing a man who was definitely not Dante. He was tall. He was muscular. He was wearing a tight t-shirt that said Gold's Gym. I pointed at the screen. "Meet Chad," I said. "Your personal trainer. The one you have been seeing 3 times a week for private sessions. The one you bought a Rolex for using the company credit card last month." Tiffany gasped. She covered her mouth with her hand. So I continued. "If Dante is sterile, and you are pregnant, then that baby does not belong to the Elijah bloodline. That baby belongs to Chad." I looked at my mother. Beatrice was staring at the screen. Her face had gone completely gray. Her hands were clutching her chest. "Mom," I said, "meet your real grandchild, the one that has absolutely nothing to do with us." Beatrice made a choking sound. She looked at Tiffany. She looked at the photo of Chad. She looked at Dante. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The dynasty she wanted to save. The legacy she sacrificed me for. It was all a lie. It was all a fraud. "You cheated on him," Beatrice whispered. Her voice was thin and weak. "You cheated on my son. You tried to pass off a stranger as my grandson." Tiffany tried to speak. "Beatrice," she stammered. It was not like that. We were on a break. Dante was distant. I needed comfort. You are a monster, Beatrice screamed, and then her eyes rolled back in her head. She slumped forward. She collapsed onto the mahogany table. Mom, Dante yelled. He scrambled out of his chair. He grabbed her shoulders. Mom, Mom, wake up. The sheriff was on his radio calling for paramedics. The bankers were standing up, backing away from the chaos. But Tiffany just stood there. She did not look at Beatrice. She did not look at Dante. She looked at me. You did this, she hissed. You ruined everything. No, Tiffany, I said calmly, watching the chaos unfold. I just turned on the lights. You are the one who was afraid of what we would find in the dark. Dante was shaking Beatrice, trying to revive her. She groaned. She was alive, but she was broken. Her spirit had snapped. I looked at Tiffany one last time. Your leverage is gone, I said. The heir is a lie. The will is a fake. And the husband you manipulated is legally a child under my care. You have nothing. Tiffany looked at the door. She looked like she was going to run. Do not bother, I said. The sheriff has a warrant. The room was spinning with noise and movement, but I felt perfectly still. The truth was out. The poison had been drawn. It was ugly, and it was painful, but it was necessary. I watched as the paramedics rushed in. I watched as they loaded my mother onto a stretcher. I watched Dante crying, holding her hand. And I stood there in my red dress, the only thing left standing in the ruins of my family. The next hour was a blur of legal and emotional violence. The paramedics took Beatrice to the hospital. Dante wanted to go with her, but I stopped him. Not yet, I said. We have paperwork to sign. We sat in the smaller conference room while the sheriff waited outside with Tiffany. She was in handcuffs now, sitting on a bench in the hallway, weeping loudly for anyone who would listen. Dante sat across from me. He looked hollowed out. He looked like a man who had lost his soul. I slid a document across the table. What is this? He asked, his voice dull. Divorce papers, I said. I had Mr. Sterling draw them up this morning. They are based on the infidelity clause in your prenup. The one Dad insisted on. The one Tiffany signed without reading because she was too busy looking at the ring. Dante stared at the papers. She cheated on me, he whispered. With a personal trainer, while I was trying to save the company for her. She did not love you, Dante, I said gently. She loved the idea of you. She loved the money she thought you had. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. If I sign this, he asked, does she get anything? I shook my head. Not a dime. The prenup is clear. Infidelity voids all spousal support. And since the baby is not yours, she has no claim on the estate for child support. She leaves with what she came with, which, knowing her, is probably a lot of fake designer bags. Dante laughed. It was a broken, sobbing sound. I really loved her, Zara. I really did. I know, I said. That is why you were an easy mark. He signed the papers. He pressed the pen down so hard it tore the paper. There, he said, pushing them back to me. It is done. Not quite, I said. I pulled out another document. This one was on Shadow Corp letterhead. This is a lawsuit, I said. Shadow Corp is suing Tiffany individually for destruction of corporate property, theft of intellectual property, and unauthorized use of company funds. We are suing her for $2 million. That covers the pink paint, the broken monitors, the stolen fuel, and the emotional distress caused to my staff. Dante looked at me. She does not have $2 million, he said. I know, I said. But this ensures she will never have $2 million. It ensures that any money she ever makes for the rest of her life will be garnished. It ensures she can never come back. Dante nodded. He looked at the door where the sheriff was waiting. Is she going to jail? He asked. Yes, I said. Forgery is a felony. Fraud is a felony. And Mr. Sterling found out she has an outstanding warrant in Florida for passing bad checks. She is going away for a long time, Dante. Good, he said. Good. He stood up. Can I go see Mom now? he asked. I looked at him. I saw the fear in his eyes. He was alone now. His wife was gone. His mother was in the hospital. He had nobody but me. I stood up too. Yes, I said. But Dante, there are conditions. He stopped. Conditions. I am paying off the loan sharks, I said. I wired the $5 million to the Shell account this morning. Your knees are safe. He let out a breath he had been holding for years. Thank you, Zara. Thank you. But I continued, I am not doing it for free. And I am not doing it so you can go back to the track. I slid one last document across the table. This is an admission into the Ridgeview Rehabilitation Center, I said. It is in Montana. It is secure. It is isolated. And it has the best program for gambling addiction in the country. Montana, he said. That is far away. That is the point, I said. You are going there for 2 years, Dante. Not 2 weeks. 2 years. You are going to get clean. You are going to learn how to live without the adrenaline. And you are going to learn how to be a man, not just a rich man's son. And if I refuse, he asked. Then I stop the wire transfer, I said. And I let the guys with the tattoos find you. He looked at me. He saw that I was serious. He saw that the sister who used to cover for him was gone. Okay, he whispered. Okay. I will go. And Mom? I asked. What about her? She is going to the Golden Years estate, I said. It is a luxury facility. She will have her bridge games and her manicures, but she will not have control over the company, and she will not have control over you. I am invoking my power of attorney over her assets as well. She is unfit to manage them. You are putting her in a home? Dante asked. I am putting her in a place where she cannot hurt us anymore, I said. She chose her side, Dante. She chose the lie. Now she has to live with the truth. Dante nodded. He looked relieved. He looked like a man who finally had permission to stop fighting. You really are the boss, aren't you? He said. I picked up the divorce papers. I picked up the lawsuit. I picked up the rehab admission forms. Someone had to be, I said. I walked Dante out to the waiting car. I told the driver to take him to the hospital to see Mom one last time and then straight to the airport. The plane for Montana was waiting. I watched him drive away. I felt a weight lift off my chest. It was done. The family was broken, but it was clean. I walked back into the lobby. The sheriff was leading Tiffany out in handcuffs. She saw me. She stopped struggling. You think you won? She spat at me. You are going to be alone, Zara. You are going to be rich and alone. I smiled at her. It was a genuine smile. I would rather be alone in a castle, Tiffany, than surrounded by snakes in a pit. The sheriff shoved her into the back of the cruiser. I watched it drive away. I turned around. Mr. Sterling was standing there holding my coat. Ready to go, Ms. Elijah, he asked. I took the coat. Yes, I said. Take me to the office. We drove to the headquarters. It was evening now. The sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. When I walked into the building, the lobby was full. The staff had not gone home. They were waiting. Hundreds of them, drivers in their uniforms, warehouse workers in their vests, the IT guys in their hoodies, even the cleaning staff. When they saw me, silence fell over the room. And then someone started clapping. It was Hattie. She was standing at the front holding a cardboard box. The clapping spread. It grew louder. Soon the whole lobby was erupting in applause. They were cheering. They were whistling. I walked through the crowd, shaking hands, hugging people. I saw relief in their eyes. I saw hope. Hattie walked up to me. She was crying. Welcome back, boss, she said. She handed me the box. I opened it. Inside were the model trucks. My father's collection. You saved them? I asked. I fished them out of the trash, she said. I cleaned them off. I knew you would want them. I hugged her. I hugged her so hard, I thought I might break her. Thank you, Hattie, I whispered. I took the elevator up to the executive floor. The pink paint was still wet on the walls, but I did not care. I would paint it black tomorrow. I walked into the office. I sat down in the chair. It was the glass chair Tiffany had bought, but it would do for now. I placed the model truck on the desk, the first one my father ever bought, the one that started it all. I looked out the window at the city lights. I thought about my father. I thought about the video. I thought about his chuckle. People say blood is thicker than water. They say family is everything. But in business and in life, numbers do not lie. Loyalty is not inherited, it is earned, and respect is not given, it is taken. I did not inherit this empire. I built it, I saved it, and I cleaned it. I poured myself a glass of water, I raised it to the empty room. To the queen, I said, and then I got back to work. The most profound lesson from this story is that true power is never inherited or stolen. It is earned through competence, resilience, and preparation. Zara proved that family status does not excuse toxicity, and silence should never be mistaken for weakness. While greed may win a moment, documentation and intelligence win the war. Setting firm boundaries and protecting your legacy isn't an act of cruelty, but a necessary act of self-preservation against those who feel entitled to your hard work. Ultimately, you must be your own advocate because respect is taken, not given. If you believe in standing up for your worth against toxic family members, hit that like button and subscribe for more satisfying stories of justice served cold.